Naruto, advancing through pure effort in Konoha. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Opening. Qingming thought, closed the panel, and planned to perform the reflection heart technique to break through the last bottleneck and open the main Gekyo Sharingan. But just as he raised his hands, he stopped. Although the experience and memory of his previous life told him that there would be no strange phenomena when opening the main Gekyo Sharingan. But just in case, Qingming decided to leave the Otani village base and find another more secret place before taking this last step. Coincidentally, he knew there was a good place nearby, which was very suitable for hiding. Qingming did it as soon as he thought of it. He didn't even say hello to others, and he left the Otani village base quietly. After running for more than 10 miles, Qingming came to a mountain stream. This place is called Shijian. It is located in a remote location, surrounded by rugged rocks, and there are no valuable targets nearby. Therefore, whether it is the Iwagakure ninja, the Konoha ninja, or the ninjas of other ninja villages, they will not come here for no reason. And the reason why he knew this place was that he passed by it once when he was with a team to raid the Iwagakure Logistics Transit Base. It can be said that this is an excellent hiding spot. Gathering chakra under his feet, Qingming stepped on the rock wall and quickly ran towards the depths of the mountain stream. After a while, a subtle sound of water flow came from the bottom. Qingming looked closely and saw a stream gurgling away, occasionally blocked by strange rocks, making a ding-dong sound. This sound entered his ears, making Qingming feel quiet, and his heart, which was a little excited about opening the main Gekyo Sharingan, slowly calmed down. Qingming flashed to the edge of the stream, glanced around, and muttered, "It's almost here." After saying that, he found a huge rock, waved his hand and shot out a wind escape chakra, cleaned it up, and then sat cross-legged on it. With a buffer just now, he was no longer anxious, so he simply closed his eyes, relaxed his mood, and tried to calm himself down completely. Time passed by minute. Half an hour later. After his mood was completely calmed down and his state reached its peak, Qingming suddenly opened his eyes, then raised his hands, quickly formed seals, and performed the reflection of the heart technique. Although he had not performed this technique for a long time, thanks to the once certified, forever certified feature of the proficiency panel, his movements were not unfamiliar at all. In an instant, the level 7 reflection of the heart technique was performed by him. Then, a special chakra condensed in his brain, then poured into his eyes and invaded his optic nerves. Everything was exactly the same as when he improved the proficiency of the Sharingan, and Qingming did not feel anything special. However, this was not a good thing, because everything was normal, which meant that his Sharingan did not evolve as expected. As time passed, the special chakra in his brain became less and less, and Qingming's heart gradually sank. Just when he thought that the reflection of the heart technique alone could not prompt the Sharingan to complete the final transformation, something unexpected happened. When the last trace of special chakra poured into his eyes immediately changed dramatically as if a switch was turned on. A strong suction force came from his eyes, sucking the chakra in his body into them continuously. Qingming covered his eyes and groaned in pain. A little blood flowed out from his fingers, and soon dyed the back of his hand red. Qingming was now very glad that he had left the Otani village stronghold, otherwise the chakra fluctuations that were now erupting from his body would inevitably attract the prying eyes of others. He really didn't expect that opening his main Gekyo Sharingan would cause such a big commotion. In his memory, whether it was Uchiha Itachi or Uchiha Sasuke, it seemed to be easily accomplished. Perhaps this is the price of defying the will of heaven and changing one's fate, Qingming thought to himself. Originally, his body was not qualified to open the main Gekyo Sharingan. Even, let alone the main Gekyo Sharingan, if Qingming hadn't traveled through time, he probably wouldn't even be able to awaken a single Magatama Sharingan. So, what he is doing now, to some extent, is equivalent to going against the will of heaven and changing fate, and it is normal that the situation is different from others. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Qingming endured the pain and carefully felt the changes in the Sharingan. It doesn't matter if he doesn't feel it, but he was shocked when he felt it. At this time, his two Sharingans were like two bottomless pits, madly devouring the chakra in his body. However, Qingming couldn't feel where these chakras went. Indistinctly, He only felt that some deeper things in his body had changed, perhaps genes, or perhaps other things. In short, the changes in these things made his Sharingan begin to evolve, gradually moving towards a higher level of Mangekyo Sharingan. At the same time, his mental power began to surge, and a stronger sense of oppression on the flesh came than before. Qingming couldn't help but let out another muffled groan, and more blood flowed out of his eyes and dripped onto the ground. If he hadn't been able to clearly feel his Sharingan evolving, Qingming would have thought that something was wrong with him. Time passed by minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, 3 minutes had passed. The pain began to subside, and Qingming breathed a sigh of relief. In his perception, these 3 minutes seemed as long as 3 days. Now, it was finally over. After a while, when the pain completely disappeared, Qingming finally had the mind to check the results of this evolution. After jumping off the boulder, Qingming flashed to the stream. Facing the clear stream water, he opened his Sharingan. He saw that his pupils instantly turned blood red. A black dot was in the middle, and 3 Magatama were distributed around at an angle of 120 degrees. It was a normal 3 Magatama Sharingan. And this was just the beginning. Qingming thought and continued to urge the Sharingan to change. The next moment, the 3 Magatama in his pupils stretched rapidly, and the head of each Magatama overlapped with a black dot in the center. Finally, the black spot became larger, occupying almost 1/3 of the pupil. Then, the 3 Magatama's elongated tails also split into 2, becoming 6 curved black lines, forming a 60-degree angle, connected to the black dot in the center. In this way, overall, his Sharingan is like a simple drawing of a black sun, which looks extremely mysterious. There is no doubt that this is his Mangekyo Sharingan. His Sharingan has successfully advanced. At this moment, Qingming only felt that his eyes were extremely powerful, as if a thought could exert infinite power. However, Qingming knew that this was just an illusion after his mental power skyrocketed. Of course, even so, his strength has greatly improved compared to before. Apart from other things, this skyrocketing mental power and the newly opened Mangekyo are enough to raise his illusion level by several levels. What's more, after opening the Mangekyo Sharingan, he should have 2 unique pupil techniques. Chapter 252 Heaven's Control. As the Eye of the Soul, the special ability obtained after opening the Mangekyo Sharingan is closely related to the host's experience and inner desire. A long time ago, Qingming was guessing what kind of eye technique he would obtain after opening the Mangekyo Sharingan. Now, he finally knows. With this thought, Qingming calmed down and carefully sensed the power residing in the Sharingan. However, he had not sensed the eye technique yet, but he had discovered another kind of power first. With a thought, Qingming followed his feeling and let out this power. Suddenly, a sharp pain came. At this moment, the cells all over his body seemed to be twitching, making the expression on his face a little out of control and distorted. Qingming couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. Then, a huge silver-white arm and ribs appeared, protecting him in it. This power is nothing else, it is the ultimate power residing in the Mangekyo Sharingan, Susanoo. The so-called Susanoo is a powerful yin escape technique obtained by the qualitative change of mental power when the Sharingan is open to the Mangekyo level. It is generally divided into 4 stages. The first stage, the appearance is a skeleton, and the chakra will completely cover the host's body. The defense is not low, but 2 fierce attacks can still break its defense. At this time, Susanoo can hold some simple weapons, such as ordinary swords, etc., and the means of attack is ordinary physical attack. The second stage, on the basis of the skeleton, it is covered with the meridians and flesh, and a layer of outer coat-like chakra is put on the surface. At this time, Susanoo reaches the best balance, and can use Susanoo's universal long-range attack method Yasuko Magatama. The third stage, on the basis of the original Susanoo, add the Karaso Tengu armor, and the defense is greatly improved. At this time, its consumption of chakra is also greatly increased, and it is extremely unstable. It is difficult for ordinary Mangekyo Sharingan to maintain it for a long time. The fourth stage, on the basis of the original second stage, the lower body and legs are added, and the volume is greatly increased. The caster will be located at the head of Susanoo. At this time, Susanoo no longer has any defensive weaknesses, and its mobility is greatly improved. The above are the 4 growth stages of Susanoo, which will continue to improve as the host's pupil power increases. As for what Qingming summoned now, it is an initial form independent of these 4 stages, that is, it can only change into arms and ribs. In this form, his body cannot be completely wrapped, leaving a large gap, which is easy to be caught by others. Therefore, its practicality is average. In addition to this initial form, Susanoo has another form, the complete form, also known as the real Susanoo. At this time, Susanoo is extremely large in size and its chakra is very stable. Its power can not only easily split mountains and meteorites, but also has the ability to fly. At the same time, it can also form a seal, so as to use the technique that the caster is good at and greatly enhance its power. It can be said that it is very perfect. But to open this form, it is necessary to maximize the pupil power of the main Gekiyo Sharingan and have a huge chakra. Qingming doesn't have to think about these for the time being, and the conditions are definitely not met. Even in the current initial form, he couldn't maintain it for a long time. There are two reasons. One is that Susanoo's pressure on the body is too strong. With his current physique, he can't support it for a long time. The second is that using this power will also cause pressure on the Sharingan. Although the damage is not as great as using the pupil technique directly, it should not be underestimated. Speaking of pupil techniques, Qingming's mind moved, and he retracted the silver-white arms and ribs on the surface of his body, and then continued to sense the power in the main Gekiyo Sharingan. After a moment, a bloody tear suddenly flowed from his left eye. Then, a force suddenly appeared, covering his whole body, making him disappear from the spot. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. After 10 seconds, Qingming reappeared. At this time, the power on his body had disappeared, but his face was full of astonishment and surprise that was difficult to conceal. There was no other reason, it was really that this power was too strong. At this time, Qingming's mind had only two words: invincible. That's right, invincible. The pupil technique that resides in his left eye is called Heaven's Guardian. It is only one word different from Kaguya Otsutsuki's ability of the Samsara Eye that can transfer space. Heaven's Guardian, but the effect is very different. To some extent, his Heaven's Guardian is even more powerful. It has two main effects. One is to separate him from this world, so as to achieve a state of jumping out of the three realms and no longer in the five elements. At this time, no matter whether it is ninjutsu, physical technique, or illusion, any attack can't hurt him. Even finding him is impossible. Even if Qingming stands in front of him at this time, the other party can't see him, let alone touch him, as if the two are in different worlds and have no effect on each other. If it were just that, it would be fine. Although this ability is very strong, it is far from invincible. The key is its second effect, that is, while separating itself, it will also drive away all negative states on the body. This is the most terrifying. That is to say, even if he was hit by Kido Matsukami, known as the strongest illusion, and his will was modified unconsciously, as long as he activated Heaven's Glory once, he would instantly return to normal. As for other situations, such as missing limbs, poisoning and curses, etc., the same principle applies. Heaven's Glory is like a restart or a rollback. In theory, as long as he still has a breath and is conscious, he will not really die. Of course, this premise is that there is enough chakra in the body, otherwise even if he has the ability, he cannot use it. However, this is enough to explain the abnormality of Heaven's Glory. It is for this reason that Qingming said that this ability is invincible. And the reason why he awakened this ability, Qingming estimated, should be related to his sense of crisis. Because he encountered the Third Ninja World War when he traveled here, his survival was worrying, and his strength was very ordinary at first. Therefore, he lived in fear for a long time. In this way, over a long period of time, he naturally pursued invincibility in his heart. In addition, he once aspired to transcend this world. And this also requires an invincible strength. With the two superimposed, it is not surprising that he awakened this ability. The only pity is that he can only maintain the Heavenly Guardian for a maximum of 10 seconds. Once this time is exceeded, it will cause a huge burden on the Sharingan, which will greatly advance the time of blindness. Therefore, even with this pupil technique, he is far from being truly invincible. He still needs to be cautious when he should be cautious. Chapter 253, Human Control. Concentrating his mind, Qingming wiped the blood from under his left eye, then calmed down and sensed the ability of the right eye. Time passed by. After a moment, Qingming opened his eyes, and a subtle chakra fluctuation emerged, but there was no change in Qingming's body. However, Qingming knew that the pupil technique of his right eye had been activated. Similar to the pupil technique of his left eye, the pupil technique that resides in his right eye is also non-aggressive. It is called human control and has only one effect, that is, to control oneself. The so-called control of oneself means to control everything about oneself, including but not limited to organs, tissues, cells, consciousness, etc. Everything included in the category of self can be affected by human control. Of course, with Qingming's current ability, he cannot achieve too fine control. At present, he can only affect things at the level of organs. For example, controlling the beating speed of the heart, the efficiency of the stomach's digestion and absorption of food, the secretion of adrenaline, etc. Judging from these alone, if Heaven's Guard is the strongest pupil technique, then Human Guard is undoubtedly the weakest. But don't forget, this is just the beginning. Indeed, the current Human Guard can be called the weakest pupil technique, but its development potential should not be underestimated. Now, its accuracy is a little worse and its operability is not strong. However, as his ability improves, the accuracy of his control over the body will also improve, so the operability will be more. For example, controlling the muscles of the body to exert all their strength, releasing the body's restrictions on chakra, and prompting the body to quickly adapt to various harsh environments. As his control over the body improves, all of these can be done. Especially controlling the body's adaptation to harsh environments, which is essentially an evolution, and it is an autonomous and controllable evolution. If Qingming was worried before that his Mangekyo Sharingan could not evolve into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Now, with Human Guard, there is no need to worry. Transplanting the eyes of a brother and opening the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is essentially making up for genetic defects, making this ability more perfect. He has no brothers or sisters, but the human defense plus the reflection of the heart technique are enough to guide the body's directional evolution and mutation and complete the genes. In other words, he no longer has any obstacles on the road before the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. In addition, there is also the strengthening of the body. With a human defense, he can also step on the fast track. In addition, when the human defense reaches a certain level, it is likely to actively restore the blindness caused by frequent use of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Although the use of human defense itself will cause blindness, as long as the rhythm is controlled well, this time can definitely be greatly delayed. In this way, coupled with the enhanced pressure-bearing ability after the body's evolution, even without the strong vitality provided by Hashira's cells, his Mangekyo Sharingan will not be useless in a short time. This means that his peak combat power can be maintained for a long time. And as long as the Sharingan is evolved to the level of the eternal Mangekyo during this period, there is no need to worry about subsequent problems. It can be said that the human defense is deeply related to his future path. To a certain extent, its importance is no less than the heaven defense that can save lives. After carefully feeling the effect of human control for a while, Qingming closed his Mangekyo Sharingan. Then, he opened the proficiency panel. The familiar light blue light screen appeared. Name: Uchiha Qingming. Age: 12 years old. Constitution: 14 Spirit. 1519 Chakra. 12,500, 42,644. Bloodline: Sharingan. 3 Magatama. 9,999, 10,000. Sharingan, Mangekyo, 1/50000. Skills: Chakra Refining Technique, LV5, 554/5000. Wind Style, Wind Blade, LV4, 1660, 2000. Shadow Clone Technique, LV3, 340/1000. Chakra Absorption Technique, LV5, 2750, 5000. Rasengan, LV4, 1710, 2000. Palm Immortal Technique, LV7, 8210/20000. Chakra Scalpel, LV4, 920/2000. Heart Reflection Technique, LV7, 4885/20000. LV7, 4886/20000. Sword Technique, LV6, 5850/10000. Illusion Sword Technique, LV3, 15/1000. Instant Sword Technique, LV1, 162/200. Chakra Control, LV5, 1450/5000. Perfect Skills. First of all, we can see that his spiritual attribute has skyrocketed by 4 points as the Sharingan has evolved from 3 Magatama to Mangekyo. You know, his base was already very high, and on top of that, it skyrocketed by 4 points. You can imagine this increase. Qingming roughly estimated that his current spiritual power is at least 1.8 times what it was before. So, taking into account the fact that his physique attribute is originally inferior to his spiritual attribute, Qingming feels that his spiritual strength is at least twice that of his physical strength. And 2 times is almost a critical point. Once this limit is exceeded, the balance will be broken, and there will definitely be trouble. Feeling the pressure of the spirit on the body at this time, Qingming is now somewhat glad that he did not open the Mangekyou Sharingan in a hurry. If he had opened it at that time, his physique attribute would only be 11 points, which is 8 points less than the current spiritual attribute of 19 points. With such a big gap, the risks involved can be imagined. Fortunately, he avoided the thunder safely. However, he cannot relax in strengthening his body afterwards, and even needs to improve it as soon as possible. Only in this way can he balance the spirit and the body and avoid an imbalance. In addition, balancing the body and the spirit as soon as possible has another benefit, which is that it can release more potential. Unlike now, limited by the lower physique attribute, his spiritual attribute has increased by 4 points, and the theoretical chakra limit has only increased by less than 50,000 points, from 71,000 points to 120,000 points. There is no doubt that this increase is a bit small. Similarly, the increase in his chakra recovery speed is not as expected, and the maximum amount of chakra that can be recovered per day has only increased by a little over 30,000 points. That is to say, the original 54,000 chakra points that can be restored every day have been turned into 85,000 points. Although this number is almost twice the upper limit of his current chakra limit, it is still somewhat unsatisfactory compared to the 4 points of spiritual attribute improvement. Fortunately, those untapped potentials are deposited in the body instead of being wasted, so Qingming did not worry too much. Retracting his gaze from the basic attributes, Qingming looked at the blood column. Just as he really felt, his Sharingan was upgraded from 3 Magatama to the Mangekyou level. However, the progress bar behind the Mangekyou Sharingan, 1/50000, made him a little dizzy. Qingming quickly performed the reflection of the heart technique to see how much effect it would have on the evolution of his Mangekyou Sharingan. Before, the LV7 reflection of the heart technique could make his 3 Magatama Sharingan gain a little progress every time it was performed. But now, after one time, the evolution of the Mangekyou Sharingan did not respond at all. Qingming tried again, but still no reaction, but Qingming could feel that its effect on the Sharingan was still there. It was not until the third time that Qingming performed the heart reflection technique that he saw the progress bar behind the Mangekyou Sharingan rise a little. In other words, he needed to perform the heart reflection technique 3 times before his Mangekyou Sharingan could gain a little evolution. In this way, plus the 5-fold longer progress bar, the difficulty was almost 15 times that of the 3 Magatama Sharingan evolving into the Mangekyou. As soon as he got this data, Qingming almost fainted. However, he soon calmed down. First of all, compared to the beginning, his chakra recovery speed has increased a lot, and the available chakra has increased a lot every day, so he doesn't have to worry about the problem of insufficient chakra for the time being. Secondly, his proficiency in the heart reflection technique is close to a quarter of LV7, and it won't take long for him to successfully advance to LV8. By then, the promotion effect on the Mangekyou Sharingan will inevitably increase, and the final proficiency required will definitely not be so exaggerated. Finally, and most importantly, after opening the Mangekyou Sharingan, he was already in a position to control the tailed beasts. Once he controlled the tailed beast to act as a chakra battery, even if it was 15 times more difficult, it would not be a big deal. Chapter 254 Distribution. After checking the harvest, Qingming did not stay for long. He quickly cleaned up the traces around him and then came to the top of Fishijian. He opened the Sharingan, scanned the surroundings, and confirmed that no one was attracted by the movement just now. Then he returned to the Otani village base. At this time, it was late at night. Stepping on the moonlight, Qingming was like a ghost, easily avoiding the surveillance of the outer rock ninjas and the patrols of the Konoha ninjas inside, and returned to his residence quietly. Inside the wooden house, Qingming washed up, and then did nothing, lying directly on the bed. After just a few breaths, he made a slight snoring sound. Obviously, he had entered a dream. In the past 1 or 2 months, he was really too tired and had a serious lack of sleep. Every day, He either had to practice or fight, and he didn't have much time to rest. Now, after opening the Mangekyou Sharingan, his strength has soared to the level of Kage, and he has a certain ability to protect himself, so he can finally have a good rest. So, in the next 3 days, Qingming did not practice at all and relaxed. Of course, he did not do nothing. At least the newly opened Mangekyou Sharingan needed time to adapt. He took this opportunity to feel the changes brought by the Mangekyou Sharingan. Apart from other things, the 4 points of spiritual attribute improvement brought by opening the Mangekyou Sharingan alone greatly increased the power of his illusion. Now, if he faces a Jonin like Mensho again, even if he still relies on the 3 Magatama Sharingan, Qingming has the confidence to use the instant illusion, Sharingan, to control the opponent for a while, instead of being easily escaped. If the Mangekyou Sharingan is added, as long as the opponent does not dodge, there is basically no possibility of escape. In other words, he has one more killer move. Moreover, it is a very hidden one. Think about it, others are fighting with him, and they have already figured out his limits in their hearts, and have certain plans for his various methods, including the 3 Magatama Sharingan. As a result, he suddenly uses the Mangekyou Sharingan. What will be the result? I'm afraid the opponent can't even react. Not to mention the power of godlike Susanoo, even if it is just the initial form, its attack and defense capabilities cannot be underestimated. And even if these don't work, he still has a move of Heaven's Guardian. 10 seconds is enough for him to do a lot of things. It can be said that there is no reason for him to lose Tourney Jonin now. However, because his 2 pupil techniques are not offensive, conventional combat methods must be strengthened. With this thought, Qingming began to distribute the chakra in his body. Nowadays, he can recover 85,000 chakras every day. Qingming plans to take out 36,000 of them to strengthen his body, that is, to perform the Palm Immortal technique. And every time the Palm Immortal technique is performed, it takes about 150 chakras, and 36,000 chakras is 240 times. At a frequency of once every 3 minutes, this practice takes about 12 hours. In addition, Qingming is also prepared to take out 30,000 chakras to tap the potential of the Mangekyou Sharingan to improve the Heaven's Guardian and Human Guardian, as well as the growth of Susanoo. As for the solution, it is naturally to practice the art of reflecting the heart. At present, his chakra control is level 5, 1450, 5000, which can reduce 26.5% of chakra consumption. In this way, practicing the art of reflecting the heart once will consume about 150 to 160 points of chakra, and 30,000 points is 192 times. This takes about 3 hours. 12 plus 3 equals 15. In other words, these 2 practices alone take up 15 hours of his time every day. From this, it can be seen that as his daily available chakra continues to grow, chakra is no longer the key to limiting his growth, and lack of time is a big problem. The most important thing is that whether it is relying on the Palm Immortal art to strengthen the body or using the art of reflecting the heart to tap potential, it is not something that the Shadow Clone can do. In other words, he cannot use the art of Shadow Clone to share the pressure. Therefore, time is very tight for him. The only good news is that his other skills can accumulate experience through the Shadow Clone, and then return to the main body and become proficiency. Although this would waste some chakra and the efficiency is not the highest, it is the best solution for him who is short of time. Therefore, Qingming intends to use this method to digest the remaining 19,000 chakra points through the Shadow Clone. As for what skills to practice, considering that these conventional methods are to make up for the shortcomings of his pupil technique that has no attack power, the only ones worth investing in are Wind Style, Wind Blade and Rasengan. The former is a good wind style ninjutsu that can be further improved. The latter is the basis for his development of the S-level forbidden technique Wind Style, Rasenshuriken, so it cannot be left behind. As for some other skills, if there is extra chakra, you can invest some, if not, you can only make do with it for now. After completing the allocation, Qingming began to practice. However, it is different from the simple repetitive practice in the past. Now, whether he uses the Palm Immortal technique to strengthen his body or the reflection of the heart technique to improve the evolution of the Mangekyou Sharingan, he will open the Mangekyou Sharingan once every 10 times or so, and use the human defense to guide the evolution of his body. Although his pupil power is a bit weak at present and he cannot perform deeper control, the human defense itself can take effect according to his subjective will. Therefore, Even if there is no obvious change, it is solely changing his body and making it evolve in the direction he expects. Therefore, it is still necessary to intersperse the use of human defense. The only thing to note is that the duration of each time should not be too long, because such frequent use of human defense puts a lot of pressure on his right eye. In order to ensure that the physique attribute is improved first and the pressure is reduced before causing serious consequences, he must master the rhythm. After almost a day of practice, he has basically estimated the time required for the physique attribute to increase from 14 points to 15 points. According to the current progress, in about 20 days, his body will accumulate enough foundation and undergo a transformation. Compared with the increase from 13 to 14, this is about 1/3 faster. Logically speaking, the difficulty of increasing from 14 to 15 is greater than that of increasing from 13 to 14, and the time required should be longer. But now it is shorter. There is only one reason for this, that is, the guiding role of human control, which allows him to avoid many detours, so it saves time. Moreover, it can be predicted that with the improvement of human control, the effect will be further enhanced, and the time saved will be even greater. Maybe, the time required for his physique attribute to increase from 15 to 16 will be shorter than it is now. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Qingming gathered his mind and continued his practice. In this way, time passed day by day. Chapter 255, On the Edge of Collapse. Swish, 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 dozens of shurikens shot at him. Qingming paused slightly, and the three Magatama in his pupils spun rapidly, instantly locking onto the flight paths of all the incoming shurikens. Afterwards, he dodged or blocked them, perfectly avoiding all attacks. However, before he could catch his breath, several more kunai shot at him. With the help of the Sharingan, Qingming clearly saw the detonating tags tied behind them. Without any hesitation, Qingming dodged a few times and pulled away. Boom boom boom, violent explosions sounded one after another, and fireballs appeared one after another, squeezing the surrounding air, forming several shock waves, blowing Qingming's hair wildly. Just as he was waiting for the shock wave to pass, a series of sharp whistles of varying lengths sounded in the field. Suddenly, on the battlefield, the rock ninjas seemed to have received some orders and quickly retreated. After a while, they pulled away from the Konoha ninjas. That's right, Qingming is now on the battlefield. At this time, half a month had passed since he opened the main Gekkai Sharingan, and 12 days had passed since he began to practice. On the second day after he began to practice, the rock ninja completed the preparations and launched an attack on Otani village again. This time, because they knew of his existence, the hidden rock village specially dispatched several masters to target him. Because of hiding, he did not reveal his full strength, so he was pinned down. Because of this, the Konoha ninjas in the Otani village stronghold fought very hard in that battle, and almost lost 1/3 of their manpower, and only then repelled the rock ninjas. In the next 10 days, the rock ninjas launched several attacks in succession. As the battle continued to this day, even though Fengliu town had sent 2 waves of support, there were still less than 150 Konoha ninjas surviving in Otani village. Moreover, everyone was very tired. It can be said that this stronghold is on the verge of being lost. As long as there is a mistake, it will basically collapse. Similar to them, several other strongholds near Fengliu town are also in a state of imminent collapse. Despite this, Omura Yudo's strategy was successful to some extent, although only partially successful, but the separate garrisons of powerful Jonins like Qingming did make up for some of the shortcomings of the Konoha ninjas. Their presence did slow down the advancement of the rock ninjas, so that the rock ninjas' attack was still stuck in the outer strongholds until now, and failed to pose a major threat to Fengliu town. Unfortunately, this stalemate was not a good thing for the Konoha ninjas below. There was no other reason. It was because of the persistence of Jonins like Qingming that the battles in the middle and lower levels were extremely fierce, which led to their heavy casualties. Although this also caused considerable losses to the rock ninjas, this continuous exchange was not unacceptable to the rock ninjas with a large number of people. For this reason, Qingming said that Omura Yudo's strategy was only partially successful. According to the information currently available, they may be able to hold these strongholds in the short term, but as time goes by, it is only a matter of time before they fall. Once these outposts were lost, it would only be a matter of time before the Fengliu town stronghold in the center was lost. I just don't know what Omura Yudo and the headquarters think, Qingming thought to himself and turned back to the Zyogu village stronghold. Looking at the wounded on the ground, Qingming skillfully transformed into a medical ninja and treated them. Fortunately, most of the injuries on these people were external injuries caused by ninja tools. With his level 7 palm immortal technique and level 4 chakra scalpel, it was easy to treat them. After spending more than an hour and completing the treatment with several other medical ninjas, Qingming told several squad leaders to be alert and return to his residence. Perhaps it was because his strength increased greatly after opening the main Gekyo Sharingan. Or perhaps it was because he had long known the outcome of this ninja world war. From the result to the cause, it was easy to infer the final outcome of the Fengliu town battle. In short, facing the attack of the rock ninja, Qingming was no longer interested. At this moment, he was just like an outsider, just doing what this character should do according to the established character setting. He didn't care much about the rest, such as the death of his subordinates, the direction of the war, etc. Qingming didn't know whether he was cold-blooded or what, but since he opened the main Gekyo Sharingan and had the power of self-protection, he has always been in this state of mind. Qingming didn't know whether this change was good or bad, and he didn't want to think about those complicated things. Now, he just wanted to practice, continue to improve his strength, and then do whatever he wanted. Perhaps, this is also a kind of purity. In a flash, time came to the next day. After a night of rest, the rock ninja couldn't wait to launch an attack again. And it seems that the opponent is going to take them down in one go this time. Standing on a roof, Qingming looked at the 300 rock ninjas in front of him, and then looked at his own side. There were less than 150 people, and everyone looked tired. In this state, Qingming felt that if he didn't make an effort this time, the stronghold might really be lost. Just when he was thinking about whether to reveal part of his strength, 4 Iwagakure Jonins ran out of the team and ran straight towards him. Seeing these 4 people, Qingming's face darkened. In the past 10 days, he had been disgusted by this kind of sticky fighting style. Although he also took the opportunity to kill a few people, it was useless. The top leaders of Iwagakure were like eating a weight, determined to entangle him. If he killed a few people, the other side would make up a few more. In short, they just wanted to prevent him from interfering with other battlefields. This made him very helpless. Qingming finally glanced at the determined Konoha ninjas around him, and then looked at the Iwagakure ninjas who were rushing in from a distance, and said to himself, "Forget it, let you hold on this time." Thinking of this, Qingming exerted a little force on his feet and performed the flash body technique. In just a moment, his figure disappeared on the roof, and when he reappeared, he had already come in front of the 4 Iwagakure Jonins. The 4 Iwagakure Jonins reacted quickly and immediately made an attacking move. At this moment, Qingming's eyes moved rapidly, and he instantly took in the movements of the 4 people, and also predicted their subsequent changes. Then, he twisted his body and avoided the attacks of 2 of them by a hair's breadth, and then swished out the short sword at his waist. Ding-ding, 2 crisp metal collision sounds were heard, and the kunai swung by the other 2 Iwagakure Jonin were also accurately blocked by him. At this moment, the entire battlefield seemed to be still, and everything in Qingming's eyes slowed down countless times. In an instant, he raised his free left hand, completed the seal at an unprecedented speed, and performed the ninjutsu, wind style, great breakthrough. He saw his chest bulge high, took a deep breath, and then exhaled violently. Chapter 256 Opportunity. What? For the 4 Iwagakure Jonin saw Qingming suddenly complete the seal, their expressions changed suddenly, and they wanted to cast a spell to stop him, but it was too late. Wind style, great breakthrough. In an instant, the sky and the earth changed color. A whirlwind was seen spitting out from Qingming's mouth, and then it quickly grew larger, and in the blink of an eye it became an extremely violent tornado. This tornado passed through the gap between the 4 people and rushed straight to the Iwagakure ninjas behind. That's right, Qingming's target from beginning to end was these 300 Iwagakure ninjas. And the reason why he came close to cast this technique was to eliminate the possibility of the Iwagakure Jonins in front of him casting a spell to stop him. Although he exposed his ability to seal with one hand for this, the effect was quite good. It was seen that the Iwagakure ninjas could not react in time to his sudden wind-style attack, and one by one, they had no choice but to dodge. Suddenly, the formation of 300 Iwagakure ninjas was broken up. And this was exactly Qingming's purpose. The number of enemies is greater than ours. To win, there are only 2 ways, either to strengthen our own strength or to weaken the enemy. Strengthen the strength of his ninjas? Qingming can't do it for the time being. Then there is only one choice, weaken the enemy. Therefore, Qingming created an opportunity, consumed a lot of chakra, and performed the wind style, great breakthrough to disperse the rock ninja team. In this way, when the two sides fight, the Konoha ninjas can take the initiative. And the Konoha ninjas behind him did not disappoint him. Seeing that the rock ninja formation was broken up, they immediately seized the opportunity and rushed up. Seeing this scene, Qingming nodded with satisfaction, and then raised his sword to meet the four rock ninjas who surrounded him for the second time. Ding ding dang dang, the crisp sound of metal collisions rang out one after another. Qingming held the short sword and fought against four people alone, without falling into the wind at all. He faintly suppressed the four rock ninjas. Drops of cold sweat slid down the foreheads of the four people. They suddenly found that Qingming's state today was a little wrong. It seemed that his strength was much stronger than before. At first, they thought it was just an illusion, or that Qingming's short-term outburst suppressed them. But as time went on, they gradually discovered that Qingming's strength was indeed much stronger than in previous battles. Did the opponent hide his strength before? The four Iwagakure were in doubt and looked at each other secretly. They all saw doubts and worries in each other's eyes. They had sacrificed many companions in order to contain Qingming before. If that was just the state of Qingming's hidden strength, they dared not imagine what would happen next. With concerns in their hearts, the movements of their hands would naturally change. Unconsciously, they reduced the frequency of attack and began to defend frequently, as if they were worried about something. And this change quickly attracted Qingming's attention. The Sharingan was running, and the subtle changes in the expressions on the faces of several people and the worry that flashed from time to time in their eyes were all keenly noticed by Qingming. Then, he thought about it and figured it out. Opportunity. In just a moment, Qingming realized that this was a good opportunity. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and soon, Qingming made a plan, and then began to change the way of fighting rhythmically. Among the four Iwagakure ninjas on the opposite side, only one was a real Jonin, and the other three were all special Jonins, so under extreme pressure, Qingming soon caught a flaw. Ding ding, Qingming swung three swords in succession, two of which blocked the kunai of two people, and the third sword forced back another Iwagakure Jonin. Then, he flashed and came to the side of the fourth person. Swoosh, the short sword in his hand stabbed straight out. Shimazu Shinai sensed the danger, and without any hesitation, he instinctively took a step back to avoid Qingming's attack from the side. However, his retreat saved himself, but he let the Iwagakure Jonin on the other side who had just been forced back by Qingming out. Seeing this, Qingming said inwardly, "Sure enough." Then, he exerted force with his feet, and the momentum of rushing forward became more fierce. The short sword in his hand slightly adjusted the direction and pointed it at the Iwagakure Jonin in front. From his smooth target switching, it is obvious that his target was not Shimazu Shinai from the beginning to the end. In fact, it was true. Everything he did just now was just to force the other party to give way. His target from the beginning was the Iwagakure Jonin, who had just been forced to this position by him. After fighting for such a long time, he had already figured out the fighting habits of the four people. So, with the help of the Sharingan, he exerted pressure step by step and finally created this opportunity. Now, it is time to test the results. Looking at the dagger that suddenly appeared in his vision, Kawachigama was slightly stunned, and then immediately dodged to the back. However, it was too late. His stun moment revealed a flaw. Perhaps in the hands of others, such a small flaw is nothing, but don't forget that Qingming has a Sharingan. Especially his Sharingan has opened the main Gekyo level. Although it is only in the state of 3 Magatama now, his inside ability is much stronger than the 3 Magatama Sharingan of ordinary Uchiha Jonin. In addition, he was unintentional, so he easily seized this opportunity. The Phantom Sword technique was performed. Suddenly, Kawachigama, who was retreating, looked dazed and his movements could not help but pause again. Although Qingming's illusion sword technique was only level 3 and could not have much impact on him, he had already revealed a flaw. As the saying goes, one step slow, all steps slow. Originally, it was just a small flaw, but after the influence of this illusion sword technique was added, it was no longer a small flaw. Gima, be careful. The real Jonin sensed the crisis and immediately shouted a warning, while throwing the kunai in his hand, trying to interrupt Qingming's movements. However, after preparing for so long, how could Qingming not have any backup? He saw his short sword tilted and blocked the kunai. Seeing this, Kanhur and Abunaga breathed a sigh of relief. Although Qingming was not injured, At least he was stopped from going further, and Gima's life was saved. But is it really so? Seeing the other party's relieved look, Qingming's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery, and then he flashed forward, tilted his head slightly, and avoided Kawachi Gima's kunai counterattack. Then, he extended his left palm and pressed it on his chest. Feeling the intense pain, Kawachi Gima looked down and saw that Qingming was holding a light blue high-density chakra ball in his left hand, which was tightly attached to his body. Puff, a mouthful of blood spurted out. Kawachi Gima couldn't bear the damage and was blown away by the chakra ball. That's right, stab with a short sword is still not Qingming's real attack method. The Rasengan that does not require hand seals is his killer. After more than 10 days of practice, his Rasengan has been upgraded from LV4, 1710, 2000, to LV5, 955,000. The improvement of proficiency makes him perform this technique more swiftly and concealedly. Look, as soon as he made a move, he crippled a Iwagakure. Today's recommendation, 5 more. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257-2. Konoha? Damn it, seeing Kawachi Gima spitting blood and flying backwards, Konoha and Abuniga cursed inwardly, and quickly took out another kunai and rushed towards Qingming. At the same time, Shimazu Shinaya, who had just dodged to make way, also knew that he had done something stupid, and immediately stepped forward to remedy the situation. Unfortunately, Qingming had already torn a hole in the group, so how could they complete the encirclement again? With a thought, the illusion sword technique was performed, and Qingming went straight to Shimazu Shinaya, who was closest. Shimazu Shinaya saw Qingming's dagger, and his expression was dazed, and his movements inevitably showed a flaw. Qingming seized the opportunity and was about to punch hard. At this moment, another Iwagakure, whose attack had just been blocked by Qingming, rushed up and blocked Shimazu Shinaya. Ding, the kunai and the dagger collided, making a crisp metal collision sound. Then there was a harsh friction sound, and just as the two were in a stalemate, Qingming suddenly raised his left hand and held it upright in front of his chest. Seeing this familiar action, both the Iwagakure in front of him and Shimazu Shinaya, who had just come to his senses behind him, changed their faces. They had not forgotten that not long ago, Qingming made a seal with one hand and performed the wind escape ninjutsu. According to that seal-making speed, once Qingming started to perform it, they might not even be able to dodge. So, without any hesitation, the two of them immediately dodged to both sides. Seeing the two people's actions, Qingming chuckled lightly, and then turned around and faced Konoha and Abuniga, who was approaching. Konoha and Abuniga was startled and slowed down his pace unconsciously. Then he saw Qingming quickly complete the seal with his left hand, opened his mouth, and spit out more a ball of fire that looked like a balsam seed. These balls of fire were like elves in the fire, and they surrounded him flexibly. Without any hesitation, Konoha and Abuniga immediately stopped, and then jumped back and left the place. However, the fireballs were relentless and continued to chase him. Konoha and Abuniga's face was sullen, and he retreated while making hand seals. Finally, at the critical moment, Konoha and Abuniga completed the hand seals and performed the ninjutsu, water style, water array wall. A water wall rose in front of him, blocking the fireballs in front of him. The flames and water flow met, making a sizzling sound. At the same time, a large amount of water vapor appeared and gathered together to form a layer of light white mist. Seeing this, Konoha and Abuniga rushed forward, his body passed through the layers of white mist, and instantly avoided the large number of fireballs that were bypassing the water wall on both sides. Although Qingming could control these fireballs to change their flight trajectory, there was a limit after all, and there was no way to make a 180-degree turn. Therefore, when Konoha and Abuniga staggered his position, he had to give up the attack. Boom boom boom, these fireballs hit the ground, blasting out charred holes one after another, and the power of them was evident. All of this is long to say, but it actually happened in an instant. It was not until Qingming's attack missed that Shimazu Shinaya and another Iwagakure, who had just dodged, realized that they had been tricked. So, they formed seals and prepared to use ninjutsu to attack Qingming. Unfortunately, their movements were too slow. After determining that the fire style, Phoenix fire technique would not work, Qingming changed direction and set the target of attack on the two again. So, just as they were preparing to form seals, Qingming threw out 6 shurikens, heading straight for their vital points. As a last resort, the two could only dodge first. And this dodge gave Qingming an opportunity. Without any hesitation, he took out a dozen shurikens again, and then his hands flew, like a fairy scattering flowers, throwing all these shurikens at the two. The two were flustered by Qingming's superb ninja tool throwing skills, and when they stopped, they only heard the warning of Konoha and Nobunaga. Be careful. Instinctively, Shimazu Shinaya lowered his head. Swoosh! A nearly 2-meter-long transparent wind blade passed over his head, and a few broken hairs slowly fell, which made Shimazu Shinaya feel scared. However, before he could feel lucky to have escaped death, a scream suddenly came from behind him on the left. Huh? Shimazu Shinaya's heart trembled, and he looked back and saw that the companion who had just dodged Qingming's attack with him had half of his right arm dropped to the ground. At the same time, there was a wound of about 10 centimeters across his right chest, leaving a neat incision. A large amount of blood and organs flowed out of the incision, and he made a painful sound from his mouth. It was obvious that he was not going to survive. Obviously, Qingming's attack just now was not only aimed at him. Qingming consumed a lot of chakra to condense such a wind blade, and the goal was to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Shimazu Shinaya reacted quickly, and with a timely warning from Konoha and Nobunaga, he avoided the attack, but another Iwagakure Jonin who was not far away from him was not able to do so. If he didn't die after being swept by the wind blade, who would die? However, Qingming was able to perform this move so quickly, thanks to his hard work over the past 10 days. Because of the large amount of chakra invested, his wind style, wind blade, like the Rasengan, was also upgraded. At this time, its proficiency has been raised from LV4, 1660, 2000, to LV5, 870/5000. And LV5 is a watershed, which is already perfect for sea-level ninjutsu. Although wind style, wind blade is not perfect because of its high level, it is much faster to perform after the upgrade. In addition, it has the characteristics of fast attack speed and good concealment, so Qingming is naturally more handy when performing it now. Just like the Rasengan, once it is performed, the effect is remarkable. After losing 2 people in a short period of time, even if Konoha and Nobunaga is a real Jonin and much stronger than his 3 companions, he dare not launch an attack rashly at this time. There is no other reason. As the number of people decreases, the threat of Qingming's Sharingan to them gradually increases. Before, when there were more people, they didn't have to worry too much about Qingming's Sharingan illusion, because even if someone was hit by the illusion, others could help block and remove the illusion. But now, there are only him and Shimazu Shinaya. If one of them doesn't cooperate well, Qingming might catch the opportunity. By then, it is not impossible for the whole army to be annihilated. Therefore, he dare not attack rashly. The same is true for Shimazu Shinaya. However, in contrast to them, Qingming is now much more relaxed. There is no other reason. The siege of 4 people and the pincer attack of 2 people are completely different concepts. The difficulty of dealing with the two is more than doubled. Facing the siege of 4 people, Qingming can't be careless at all, otherwise he will fall into disadvantage and be exhausted step by step. But if there are only 2 enemies, it will be much simpler. Not to mention that he has opened the main Gekkai Sharingan, the power of the illusion has greatly increased. Even if it is not opened, he can deal with it more easily. At least, there will be no danger. However, Qingming didn't want to deal with it so simply. He wanted to take this opportunity to test the power of the main Gekkai. Once this idea came up, Qingming couldn't suppress it. After a struggle between his mind and his own, he decided to give it a try. Of course, considering that there were many people around, he didn't intend to use any overly obvious means. He only planned to test the amplification of the main Gekkai Sharingan on illusions. He wanted to see what a well-rounded Jonin could do in the face of this level of illusion. In this way, he would have a reference when he fights with others in the future. With this thought in mind, Qingming raised his sword and rushed towards Shimazu Shinaya, who was closer. Chapter 258 Control. Seeing Qingming rushing straight towards him, Shimazu Shinaya's heart trembled, and he turned around and wanted to escape. However, when he saw Konoha and Nobunaga approaching rapidly in the distance, he calmed down again, clenched the kunai in his hand, and met Qingming. Ding ding dang dang, the crisp sound of metal collision rang out, and Qingming, holding a dagger, turned into a ghost, and continued to attack Shimazu Shinaya. Without the restraint of others, his vision-blocking tactics can finally be brought into play. However, Shimazu Shinaya has fought with him several times, and at least he has accumulated some experience, so there was no big mistake for a while. When Qingming finally found an opportunity, Kanhura and Nobunaga rushed over again. As a last resort, he could only give up this opportunity temporarily and start to deal with the attack of the two at the same time. Qingming could clearly feel that Kanhura and Nobunaga was already fighting hard, and the opponent's moves were much more vicious than before, and sometimes he would even use Shimazu Shinaya as bait. Unfortunately, in Qingming's eyes, these small movements were like fireflies in the dark, very conspicuous, and naturally, he could not be caught. As the saying goes, the first effort is strong, the second is weak, and the third is exhausted. The opponent wanted to fight to the death, but Qingming refused to obey the opponent's wishes, just to delay time, and wait for the explosion to pass. It would be his chance. As time passed, Kanhura and Nobunaga became more and more anxious. As a Jonin, he certainly knew that this mentality was not conducive to fighting. However, watching Qingming's effortless blocking and counterattack, he still couldn't help but get anxious. And when people are anxious, they often make mistakes. Qingming originally wanted to delay until the opponent was weak before exerting force, but suddenly saw an opportunity. Is it a trap? Qingming's mind turned quickly, and the 3 Magatama Sharingan was fully activated, constantly scanning the expressions, movements and demeanor of the two. At this moment, time seemed to stand still. In Qingming's eyes, Kanhura and Nobunaga's eyes flashed with panic, and Shimazu Shinaya's face had an even more obvious look of anxiety. Qingming initially concluded that this was not a trap, but a mistake in the cooperation between Nobunaga Kanhura and Shinaya Shimazu. With this thought, Qingming no longer hesitated, and immediately ducked to avoid Nobunaga Kanhura's attack, then swung his short sword to the right to block the kunai stabbed by Shinaya Shimazu. At this point, both of their attacks failed, and because of the time, no one had time to change their moves, so Qingming had an excellent opportunity to counterattack. Moreover, because of the position, he happened to look up and look at Nobunaga Kanhura. Originally, even if they looked at each other, it would be nothing. Even if Qingming took the opportunity to hypnotize the other party, Shinaya Shimazu could make up the attack in time and force him to give up the opportunity to make up the knife later. But this time was different. Their attacks overlapped. This means that after Nobunaga Kanhura was hit, Shinaya Shimazu had no time to stop him from making up the knife. And this is also the fundamental difference between a 2-person pincer attack and a 4-person siege. The tolerance rate of the two is not on the same level. If there were 4 people, then this situation could be easily resolved, but if there were only 2 people, it would be a fatal mistake. However, Qingming didn't care about that. Facing the eyes of Kanhura and Nobunaga, he thought about it, and the 3 Magatama Sharingan began to change. It was seen that the 3 Magatama stretched rapidly, and the dots on the head and the black dots in the center merged together, suddenly expanding a circle. Then, the elongated tails of the 3 Magatama also split into 2, turning into 6 black lines, extending to the edge of the pupil. Finally, an abstract thing like a black sun appeared in Qingming's pupil, which was his main Gekyo Sharingan. This was the first time that Qingming opened the main Gekyo Sharingan in front of outsiders. Kanhura and Nobunaga looked at Qingming's suddenly changing eyes. Although he didn't know what it meant, his instinct told him that he couldn't look at it. Immediately, Kanhura and Nobunaga planned to close his eyes and retreat. However, it was too late. Everything just now seemed long, but it actually happened in an instant. Before he could close his eyes, Qingming raised his left hand. Without any other movement, Kanhura and Nobunaga suddenly froze in place. Then, his entire consciousness was pulled into the illusion without any resistance. Next to him, Shimazu Shinaya was horrified and was about to say something. However, he was interrupted by Qingming's finger just after he said a word. Just like dealing with Kanhura and Nobunaga, Qingming just pointed out a finger and instantly cast a Genjutsu Sharingan, which pulled the other party's consciousness into the illusion. At this point, both of them froze in place, motionless. The black sun in the pupils dispersed and returned to the state of 3 Magatama. Qingming looked at the 2 people in front of him and was very surprised. Although he had long known that the illusion under the blessing of the main Gekyo Sharingan was absolutely powerful, he still did not expect that it would be so easy to deal with a Jonin. Qingming was sure that as long as he didn't remove the illusion, neither Kanhura and Nobunaga nor Shimazu Shinaya would be able to break free for a while. As expected of the main Gekyo Sharingan, Qingming sighed inwardly, and swung the short sword in his hand, and the throats of Kanhura and Nobunaga and Shimazu Shinaya were instantly cut off by him. Among them, Konoha and Nobunaga was affected by severe pain and suffocation and broke free from the illusion, but Shimazu Shinaya was still immersed in the illusion until his death. From this, it can be seen how terrifying his illusion was under the blessing of the Mangekyo. Ignoring Konoha and Nobunaga with his eyes wide open, Qingming took out several kunai and threw them out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the kunai flew more than 10 meters and nailed to the seriously injured Kawachi Gima and another Iwagakure Junin whose life and death were unknown. Among them, Kawachi Gima still wanted to resist, but unfortunately, how could his seriously injured body stop Qingming's extremely accurate ninja tool throwing? In the end, he could only fall to the ground unwillingly. At this time, Konoha and Nobunaga also took his last breath. Looking at the 4 corpses on the ground, Qingming thought for a moment, formed a seal again, and cast 4 fire-style, great fireball technique and smashed them on the 4 corpses. Suddenly, a raging flame burned and completely engulfed the 4 corpses. This is not because Qingming likes to torture corpses, but there are thousands of secret techniques in the ninja world. Who knows if anyone will read any information from these corpses? If he can read memories from corpses like Yamanaka Inochi, then his Mangekyo Sharingan will be exposed. Therefore, it is better to destroy the corpses. Of course, there is still a hidden danger now, that is, their souls still exist. If someone can perform a mortal reincarnation or some other secret technique to summon the souls of these people from the Pure Land to the mortal world, then, in theory, he can also find his hidden Mangekyo. However, this possibility is too small, and no one has time to summon the souls of these people, so there is no need to care too much. Besides, he didn't have any means to seal or harm the soul for the time being, so even if he wanted to completely eliminate this hidden danger, he couldn't do it. In this case, it would be better to let nature take its course. Chapter 259, Encirclement and Killing. Puff puff, the sound of bubbles bursting could be heard from time to time. Qingming looked at the 4 burning bodies, sniffed a burnt smell at the tip of his nose, and frowned slightly. After waiting for a while, and confirming that the 4 bodies were basically impossible to recover, Qingming immediately left this place and walked towards the battlefield in the distance. On the battlefield, the Konoha ninjas all showed joy when they saw him coming, while on the contrary, the Iwagakure ninjas showed fear when they saw him. Qingming didn't waste any words. He swept his eyes and found a place where the Konoha Junin and the Iwagakure Junin were fighting, and crossed over. Ding ding dang dang, it didn't take long for Qingming and this Konoha Junin to solve the opponent. In the distance, Kuriko Ichiro, who was in charge of the command, saw this scene and couldn't help but think of the tragic defeat more than half a month ago. It seems that it was because Qingming first solved the opponent, then assisted other Konoha Junin to break the situation, and finally completely disintegrated their offensive. Is this going to happen again? Kuriko Ichiro glanced at the 4 bodies burning in the distance, and then looked at the Iwagakure Junin who had just been killed by Qingming, thinking secretly in his heart. Unconsciously, he touched his hard left hand and forearm, and a trace of anger suddenly arose in his heart. He glanced at the battlefield and confirmed that half of the Konoha ninjas had been killed. As long as they hold on for a while, victory will be theirs. With this thought in mind, he no longer hesitated and immediately mobilized people to surround and kill Qingming. Soon, a team of 30 Iwagakure ninjas surrounded Qingming. However, facing so many enemies, there was no fear on Qingming's face, as if he could not see these people, and he still stood there leisurely. This is not Qingming pretending to be cool, but these people really can't pose a threat to him. In fact, he had noticed the unusual movements of these people a long time ago, but he did not choose to stop or break through, with the purpose of letting them come over. Although he created an opportunity at the beginning of the battle and used the wind style, great breakthrough, breaking up the formation of the rock ninja and allowing his subordinates to take the first move advantage. However, the gap in hard power still allowed the rock ninja to gradually turn the disadvantage around. While he was fighting with Konoha and Nobunaga and others, 50 or 60 of his Konoha ninjas had been killed. If he continued like this, even if he killed all the rock ninjas in the end, he might not be able to win. Moreover, if he did so, even if he defeated the rock ninjas in the end, there would probably not be many people left on their side. Qingming's goal was to let these people survive this battle, not just to keep the stronghold. Therefore, he certainly could not limit his target to those rock ninjas, and he had to reduce the pressure on his Konoha ninjas. But it was impossible for him to ignore the unspoken rules of the battlefield and attack the rock ninjas, because that would lead to the same retaliation from other rock ninjas. By then, the casualties would probably be even greater. Originally, this was an unsolvable deadlock. Now that the other party took the initiative to summon middle and lower level ninjas to besiege him, it was no wonder that he was so ruthless. That's right, among the 30 rock ninjas summoned by Kiriko, except for himself and another rock ghost Jonin, the rest were middle and lower ninjas. That's why Qingming was so calm. With his current strength, as long as the number of middle and lower ninjas did not exceed a limit, there would be no threat to him. As for where this limit is, Qingming glanced at the entire battlefield. At least these 300 people added together were not enough, let alone a mere 30 people. Kill, with Kiriko Ichiro's order, the surrounding rock ghost middle and lower ninjas either threw kunai, fired shurikens, or performed ninjutsu. In short, they all attacked Qingming. If it were an ordinary person, facing this dense attack, there seemed to be no good way except to dodge. But Qingming was different. He chose to bombard. He saw that he stomped his feet on the ground fiercely and the whole person jumped high. In mid-air, he twisted his body to avoid a sneak attack of several shurikens. Then, he quickly completed the seals with both hands, opened his mouth, took a deep breath, and exhaled violently, performing the ninjutsu, wind-style breakthrough. In an instant, more than 2,000 points of chakra disappeared, and the whirlwind spit out by Qingming turned into a tornado in the blink of an eye. And this tornado bombarded the ground, instantly blowing up a thick layer of soil and gravel, and the strong wind wrapped them and quickly spread to the surroundings. Suddenly, the kunai, shuriken, detonating talismans, ninjutsu, etc. that were shot were all blown back by the storm. Some of the detonating talismans exploded on the way, and the flames produced made the storm even more brutal. Seeing this scene, all the rock ninjas retreated unconsciously, their eyes full of disbelief and panic. There was no way. Qingming's current performance was too terrifying. Can this level of wind-style ninjutsu really be performed by humans? All of the rock ninjas were surprised and suspicious. Although most of the rock ninjas present have more than 2,000 chakras in their bodies, it is not an easy task to release so much chakra at once and shape it into ninjutsu. This requires not only extremely strong chakra control, but also a deep understanding of the relevant ninjutsu. If Qingming's chakra control had not been promoted to level 5, and the wind-style, big breakthrough had not been completed, he would not be able to do this. And the effect of the ninjutsu performed by releasing so much chakra at once is also quite amazing. Apart from other things, the clearing effect is absolutely top-notch. Thinking back to the time when he learned wind-style, big breakthrough, it was because he could not find the large-scale attack ninjutsu fire-style, great fire extinguishment, so he could only find a substitute. Now, this substitute has finally played the expected effect, and Qingming is very pleased. In mid-air, Qingming, who was falling, his pupils turned rapidly, locked on the rock ninjas below, and then took out several shurikens from his ninja bag. Swish, swish, swish. These shurikens were thrown by him, spanning a distance of more than 10 or 20 meters, and in the chaos, hit several awakens. Suddenly, several screams were heard. Qingming landed on his feet, and without any pause, he jumped to the side. The next moment, he saw several kunai flying over and stabbed directly at the place where he just stood. And several detonating tags on them burned rapidly. Qingming's figure flashed and instantly pulled away. Boom boom boom, a violent explosion sounded. In a cloud of dust and smoke, Qingming's steps were agile, accurately and elegantly avoiding the flying kunai and shurikens, and he came to an awakens. Swish, the sound of a sharp blade cutting through flesh and blood sounded. At some point, Qingming pulled out the short sword at his waist, and then swung it out, cutting off the throat of the awakens in an instant. Then, he quickly took out a detonating tag and stuck it on the man. Then, he dodged another round of attacks with a flash of his body. Boom, a violent explosion sounded. Then, another awakens ninja screamed. Qingming took the time to glance over there, and saw an awakens ninja lying next to the awakens ninja whose throat he had cut. His body was charred and he was obviously dead. Qingming retracted his gaze and transformed into a ghost again, moving among the awakens ninjas. He used his 3 Magatama Sharingan to the fullest and killed and injured the awakens ninjas with extremely high efficiency. During this time, Kiriko Ichiro and another awakens Jonin wanted to stop him, but they had no chance at all. In a short while, most of the 30 awakens ninjas were killed or injured. Chapter 260 Adjustment. Fire Style. Phoenix Fire Technique. Qingming dodged the ninjutsu attacks of several Iwagakure ninjas, stabbed one of the Iwagakure Sharingan in the heart with a sword, and then used his body as a shield. Then, he raised his left hand, completed the seal in the blink of an eye, and performed the ninjutsu, fire style, Phoenix Fire Technique. In an instant, hundreds of fist-sized fireballs appeared, controlled by Qingming, and smashed into the Iwagakure ninjas in front of him like a meteor shower. These Iwagakure ninjas either dodged or blocked, and finally all avoided the attack. Just as they were about to counterattack, a transparent wind blade flew over quickly, and only a sound of flesh and blood being torn was heard. Suddenly, two Iwagakure Chunin were cut in half. Painful wails rang out. The two Iwagakure ninjas did not die immediately. Their upper bodies slid to the ground, their mouths opened wide, and they made painful sounds. On the side, several Iwagakure ninjas saw their miserable condition, and their pupils were all trembling. Then, they all looked forward, not missing any movement, as if they were afraid that they would be attacked in the same way. However, Qingming had already left the spot, at the same time. On the other side, looking at Qingming, who was still at ease under the attack of the Iwagakure ninjas, Kuriko Ichiro stopped in vain and cursed inwardly, "Damn it!" Then, he looked at the Iwagakure Chunin beside him and ordered, "Send the third and fourth teams here immediately." Huh? Seemingly a little surprised by Kuriko Ichiro's decision, the Iwagakure Chunin couldn't help but make a puzzled sound. Seeing his reaction, Kuriko Ichiro frowned and said, "What? Execute the order immediately." Hearing this, the Iwagakure Chunin glanced at Qingming and wanted to say something, but due to Kuriko Ichiro's power, he finally gave up. "Yes, Captain," he responded, and then went to execute Kuriko Ichiro's order. In fact, he felt that the captain was a little crazy. From Qingming's performance, it can be seen that his strength is not something that these middle and lower ninjas can deal with. Sending people here now is no different from pushing people into the fire. Doesn't Kuriko Ichiro know this? No, of course he knows. It's just that he has no other way. They took the lead in launching the siege, which has broken the unspoken rules of the battlefield to a certain extent. In this case, the only way to restrict Qingming from attacking other middle and lower ninjas is to send a few Jonins to besiege him. But Kuriko Ichiro glanced at the entire battlefield. Now on the battlefield, all the active Iwagakure Jonins are entangled by other Konoha Jonins, and there is no extra manpower at all. In this case, in order to prevent Qingming from rescuing other Konoha ninjas, he can only mobilize more people to besiege him. In this way, the casualties may be considerable, but at least Qingming can be confined to one place, so that he cannot play freely. As long as other battlefields are victorious, even if Qingming persists to the end, it will be useless, and this stronghold will eventually be captured by them. As for the life and death of those mid-level and low-level ninjas, to be honest, in the atmosphere of Iwagakure village, Kuriko Ichiro really didn't care much. If he could use their lives to consume Qingming's state and eventually kill him, let alone more than a dozen people died. Even if it doubled, it would be worth it. Unfortunately, his idea was good, but he couldn't stand Qingming's strength beyond his understanding. 10 minutes later, Kuriko Ichiro looked at the third and fourth teams, most of whom were killed or injured, as well as the initial surviving people, and felt dizzy. In just this period of time, Qingming had killed more than 40 Iwagakure ninjas. This killing speed exceeded the sum of all Konoha ninjas. If this continues, Konoha will not collapse yet, but they will collapse first. Captain, we can't go on like this. Think of a way. The third and fourth teams can't hold on anymore. It was still the Iwagakure Chunin. He looked at Kuriko Ichiro and said earnestly. But Kuriko Ichiro was also desperate. What could he do? The strength that Qingming showed a few days ago was just like that. Although it was very strong, it was not impossible to deal with. But today, who knows what medicine the other party took, his strength has become so strong. Not only did he kill the 4 people of Konoha and Abunagare who were specifically against him, but he also pressed them to the ground. Where can he go to reason? Damn it, are we going to retreat? Kuriko Ichiro looked at the battlefield around him where his side still had the advantage. It was unreasonable to retreat like this. After a little thought, he looked at the Iwagakure Chunin and said, "You let the 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 6th teams leave the battlefield, stop those Konoha Jonins for Kurofu and others, and then let Kurofu and others come to deal with Uchiha Qingming." Hearing this, the Iwagakure Chunin's eyes lit up and he immediately understood Kuriko Ichiro's idea. In fact, Kurikal Ichiro's idea was very simple, that is, to separate the people who were supposed to besiege Qingming to contain other Konoha Jonins. Then let the Iwagakure Jonins who were fighting with these Konoha Jonins come to deal with Qingming together. In this way, there may still be many casualties, but they will definitely not be as exaggerated as they are now. However, in this way, all the pressure will come to them. If they cannot completely suppress or kill Qingming, there are several senior ninjas in Konoha, and they may be able to turn the tables. It can be said that this is a gamble. But not gambling is not possible. If they continue to send people to besiege Qingming, I am afraid that they will collapse first. Ichiro Kurikal can only take a gamble. Just as the Iwagakure Chunin left to convey his order, Ichiro Kurikal looked up at Qingming who was still killing in the field. In the past, he had heard of people who could change the direction of the war with their individual strength, but those people were all famous figures in the ninja world. But now, this happened to Qingming. Faintly, he seemed to see the shadows of these people on Qingming. Perhaps, after today, the name of Ghost Sword Qingming will be louder suddenly. This thought popped up in Ichiro Kurikal's mind. Then, his face turned black. What does this mean? Do I subconsciously think that even if we gather the strength of He-Fang and others, we still can't kill Uchiha Qingming? Kurikal Ichiro asked himself this question in his heart. For a long time, he had no answer. Or rather, he already had the answer in his heart, but he didn't want to accept it. Humph. Then let me see it for myself. Kurikal Ichiro didn't think any more, snorted coldly, touched his stiff left hand and forearm, and muttered. This half of his arm is a prosthesis. More than half a month ago, he led people to raid the Otani village stronghold, and it was Qingming who killed several of their senior ninjas and disintegrated their offensive. And his arm was also lost in that battle when he was besieged by several Konoha senior ninjas. He put the blame on Qingming. Now, personal grudges and the interests of the village are consistent, and he wants to try to see if he can avenge himself. Chapter 261 Confrontation. Soon, with the help of a group of Iwagakure middle and lower ninjas, the four Iwagakure Jonins including Kurofu got rid of the entanglement of their opponents, the Konoha Jonins, and came to Kurikal Ichiro. During this period, the Konoha Jonins still wanted to stop them, but at Qingming's signal, they all gave up the pursuit and began to deal with the Iwagakure middle and lower ninjas in the field. On Qingming's side, a total of 6 Iwagakure Jonins gathered. However, among these 6 people, only Kurikal Ichiro and Kurofu were real Jonins, and the other 4 were just special Jonins. In general, their strength is stronger than that of Konoha and Nobunaga and others, but not much stronger. At least, after a fight with the Konoha Jonins, their condition is not very good, and some of them even have obvious injuries. Qingming has enough confidence to deal with these people. And this is why he asked the Konoha Jonins to give up obstruction. Previously, he had killed quite a few Iwagakure middle and lower ninjas. Next, as long as he defeated these people, the morale of the Iwagakure ninjas will immediately collapse. At that time, they can declare victory. With this thought, Qingming looked at the 6 people who gradually surrounded him, and his eyes changed. His pair of blood-red Sharingan was full of coldness. Being stared at by him like this, several Iwagakure Jonin felt a chill in their hearts. However, after all, they were all strong men who crawled out of the sea of blood and corpses, and the 6 people were not scared by his murderous eyes. On the contrary, when Qingming looked at them, the 6 people launched an attack. 2 of them threw the kunai in their hands and attacked Qingming's vitals. Another 2 people jointly performed the Earth-style, Earth Spear, controlling rock spikes to emerge from the ground and block Qingming's range of activities. As for the remaining 2 people, Kurikal Ichiro formed seals with his hands and performed an unknown fire-style ninjutsu, condensing 6 fireballs the size of a human head, which hit Qingming from different directions. He-Fang's body suddenly turned gray-brown, and then the whole person shot towards Qingming like a cannonball, punching him. However, despite the many attacks, Qingming was not panicked at all. In his eyes, a pair of Sharingan rapidly rotated, and in the blink of an eye, he took everything in front of him into his field of vision, while his brain was working rapidly. At this moment, his nerve reaction was pushed to the limit, and he instantly judged the trajectory of these attacks and the possible changes in the future. Based on this information, his figure flashed one after another, dodging the attack of kunai and avoiding the sudden attack of underground rock spikes. The fireball controlled by Kurikal Ichiro was also blocked and exploded by the dense fireball condensed by the fire-style, Phoenix fire technique he performed on the way. As for the last black wind, the opponent obviously performed some kind of earth-style ninjutsu, which changed the structure and density of the body. Qingming did not want to fight it head-on, so he raised his hand and performed a genjutsu, Sharingan, to control it in place. Everything is long to say, but it actually happened in an instant, and in this instant, Qingming resolved the joint attack of 6 Iwagakure. After completing these, he did not pause at all, and quickly formed seals with both hands, and skillfully performed the ninjutsu, wind style, wind blade. In an instant, a meter-long wind blade flew out, aiming directly at Hifeng, who was standing still. The reason for attacking the opponent was that the opportunity was rare, and secondly, he wanted to test how strong the opponent's earth-style defense was. However, when he saw Ichiro rushing forward and pulling Hifeng to avoid the wind blade attack, he roughly understood that the opponent should not be able to withstand such an attack. Ichiro had seen the power of his wind style, wind blade, and thought his judgment would not be wrong. However, in order to prevent the opponent from deliberately misleading, Qingming decided not to use this point before he was completely sure of this information. And just when Ichiro was taking action, the other 4 Iwagakure also moved, and 2 of them still used ninjutsu to block his evasive space, and the other 2 launched an attack. Qingming's Sharingan kept turning, and he flexibly avoided the ninjutsu attack. Looking at the 2 Iwagakure getting closer and closer to him, he suddenly drew out his short sword. Then, he pushed off the ground with his feet, and the whole person rushed out like a sharp arrow, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the 2 people. Jinjutsu, Sharingan, because the 2 were partners, and there were teammates behind them, they did not avoid Qingming's gaze. Therefore, Qingming easily found an opportunity to perform illusions. He raised his hand and performed Jinjutsu, Sharingan, and an Iwagakure was hit on the spot, and his body froze in place. Another Iwagakure next to him noticed something was wrong and immediately stabbed Qingming with a kunai in his hand. The angle of this kunai was intended to prevent Qingming from getting close to the hit Iwagakure, and also to force him to return to defense. Unfortunately, Qingming did not do what he wanted at all. Qingming swung his sword and blocked the kunai attack. At the same time, the illusion sword technique was performed, causing the Iwagakure to fall into a momentary trance. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he condensed a light blue high-density chakra ball in the palm of his left hand, which was the Rasengan. Then, he extended his left palm and pressed the Rasengan directly towards the Iwagakure, who was controlled by his Jinjutsu Sharingan. What? Seeing Qingming's action, the Iwagakure, who had just woken up from the illusion sword technique, had no time to think and immediately swung the kunai in his hand for the second time. Unfortunately, he was a beat late. It was not until Qingming pressed the Rasengan on the man that the kunai in his hand barely touched Qingming. The Rasengan broke apart as soon as it touched him, and Qingming retreated and avoided most of the damage, but a cut was made on his chest. Boom boom, 2 ninjutsu attacks came. Qingming tapped the ground with his feet and dodged the attacks in a flash. The first wave of confrontation between the 2 sides stopped here. Qingming seriously injured an Iwagakure at the cost of having his chest cut by a kunai. That's right, he was seriously injured. Although his Rasengan only broke apart at the first touch, the twisting force contained in it had already penetrated into the opponent's body, causing serious internal injuries. In the next battle, he would most likely not have a chance. In other words, the Rock Ninja side lost 1 person. Although Ichiro was not happy with this result, he was not too disappointed. After all, Qingming was also seriously injured. Suddenly, his eyes fixed on Qingming. There was no other reason, but he saw Qingming's hands quickly forming seals, and he didn't know what ninjutsu he performed. After a ball of green chakra was injected into his body, the bleeding stopped. Not only that, the injury on his chest also began to recover. Although the speed was not very fast, it was indeed not slow. At this rate, it would probably recover in a few minutes. This made Ichiro's face completely gloomy. There was no way anyone would not be in a good mood when they saw that one of their own people was seriously injured, while the enemy was alive and kicking. Today is the 5th update. Chapter 262, Lessons and Counterattack. Qingming did not use any other ninjutsu, but the palm immortal technique. Thanks to the high intensity of the palm immortal technique used to strengthen his body over the past period of time, Qingming developed a strange trick. That is to inject the yang escape chakra condensed by the palm immortal technique into the vicinity of the wound at one time, thereby compressing the entire treatment process. Although this will lose some chakra and reduce the treatment effect, it has an advantage that cannot be ignored. That is, it does not require extra time and energy to maintain. Generally speaking, except for a few medical ninjutsu, most medical ninjutsu take a while to treat injuries. In this way, it is destined that there is no way to heal yourself during the battle. But the moves developed by Qingming are different. It can be used when fighting with others and then heal your own injuries. Just like now, he pulled away a little and immediately gave himself a modified palm immortal technique. Suddenly, the bleeding on his chest stopped, and the wound began to heal at a fast speed. Just as Ichiro thought, it only took a few minutes for his chest injury to be initially healed. By then, his strength will be restored to its peak. And this is the reason why Qingming dares to exchange injuries for injuries. Looking at the remaining 5 Iwagakure Junins, Qingming did not wait for the other party to take the initiative this time, but took the lead in performing the ninjutsu, wind style, breakthrough from a distance. Although the attack power of this technique is average, it is very suitable for disrupting the enemy's formation. Even if Ichiro and others are Junins, they dare not face Qingming's wind style, breakthrough, which consume 2,000 chakras. Its attack power is not strong, it is said to be instant killing power, but if you are unfortunately caught in it, it will not be too good. After all, who knows what will be mixed in this wind? With the fragile bodies of these 5 people, it is possible that they will end up seriously injured. Therefore, Ichiro and others did not dare to face the attack of this technique directly, and dodged to the sides. And this is exactly what Qingming needs. With the help of the Sharingan, Qingming carefully observed the movements of several people. When he saw one of them holding the Iwagakure Junin, who was seriously injured by the Rasengan and hiding aside, his eyes lit up and he immediately gave up maintaining the wind style, great breakthrough. Then, he flashed, and before the tornado dissipated, he came to the 2 people with the instant body technique. Qingming was about to swing his sword and drop, and a sense of crisis suddenly emerged in his heart. Then, he saw a trace of a grimace on the face of the Iwagakure Junin, and at the same time, black lines appeared on his body and the surrounding ground. At a glance, Qingming knew that he had fallen into a trap. This black line was nothing else but a curse seal with the power of rules. Although Qingming didn't know much about the curse seal and sealing technique, he knew from his previous life that these things were the only magic weapon to defeat the strong with the weak. Not knowing the specific effects of these curse seals, Qingming didn't want to take risks, so he flashed and planned to leave this place. As for the opportunity, he would look for it later. However, to his surprise, his instant body technique was ineffective. No, it's not that the flash body technique failed, but that he was bound to the spot and couldn't move at all. Seeing Qingming's stunned expression, Aguri Genisuke showed a mocking smile. He slowly put down the seriously injured Iwagakure Junin in his hand and sneered, "You don't really think I would be so stupid? Everyone else is walking together, but I'm alone, giving you an opportunity to take advantage of me?" Naive. Hearing the other party's words, Qingming also began to reflect. Yes, the other party is a Junin after all. Although he doesn't dare to face my wind style, great breakthrough, he won't panic to make such a low-level mistake. Then what prompted me to ignore this possibility? Is it the long-term victory? Or the newly awakened Mangekyo? Qingming found that he didn't know when he was not so sensitive to danger. This is definitely not a good sign. You know, even as strong as Uchiha Madara, there are times when he is calculated by others. If he can't maintain a cautious style, it would not be surprising if he capsizes in the gutter one day. Today's experience was a reminder for him. I must not be so careless in the future, Qingming warned himself in his heart. Seeing Qingming's serious expression and not saying a word, Aguri Genisuke thought he was frightened by the sudden change. So, without saying anything, he immediately seized the opportunity and stabbed the kunai in his hand directly into Qingming's heart. However, just when the kunai was about to touch Qingming, Qingming suddenly said, "Thank you." What? Aguri Genisuke was confused for a moment when he heard this sincere thank you. What's going on? Are you scared, silly? Aguri Genisuke was full of doubts, but his hands did not stop moving. The kunai continued to move forward and instantly pierced Qingming's heart. Aguri Genisuke was about to breathe a sigh of relief, but suddenly found that the feeling in his hand was wrong. The kunai did not have the blocking feeling of piercing the flesh and blood, but it seemed to fall into the air, without any feeling of piercing the solid. His eyes blurred, and Qingming's figure disappeared silently. No. It's an illusion, Agirisuka's heart trembled, and he hurriedly searched for Qingming. At this moment, a familiar voice came from behind him. "Thank you for your teachings. I will remember what happened today." What? Agirisuka's heart was alarmed, and he immediately wanted to dodge to the side. However, it was too late. Puff! A dagger pierced through his chest and pierced his heart directly. Agirisuka's body stagnated, and he glanced back, and then saw half of Qingming's cheek, and a strange eye on his cheek that looked like a black sun. This is, the revolving lantern before his death made Agirisuka seem to think of something. His pupils suddenly dilated, and he wanted to say something, but he couldn't say anything. Squeak! Qingming drew out the dagger and took away the last bit of strength of Agirisuka. Seeing his body fall to the ground, Qingming breathed a sigh of relief, and his Mangekyo Sharingan returned to the state of 3 Magatama. That's right, just now, he opened the Mangekyo Sharingan and used the pupil technique that resides in his left eye, Heaven's Guard. The instant invincible state allowed him to easily get rid of the shackles of the curse seal at his feet and came behind Agirisuka. Then, he pierced the opponent's heart with a sword. It can be seen that although Heaven's Guard is not an offensive pupil technique, if used well, the actual combat effect will not be too bad. Qingming glimpsed the other 4 Iwagakure Jonin approaching quickly with his peripheral vision. Without any hesitation, he immediately raised his hand to seal and used the ninjutsu twice in succession, fire style, great fireball technique. Bang bang! 2 huge fireballs appeared and hit the body of Agirisuka and the seriously injured Iwagakure Jonin on the ground. After dealing with the beginning and the end, Qingming turned around and faced the 4 Iwagakure Jonin. Chapter 263 Total Annihilation. Ichiro stopped about 10 meters away from Qingming. He looked at the 2 bodies burning behind Qingming with a very ugly face. He was clear about Agirisuka's calculations. He thought that even if he couldn't trap Uchiha Qingming, nothing serious would happen. He never thought that he would lose his life in an instant. And what was the situation of the opponent's flash just now? Space ninjutsu. Ichiro was extremely confused. At the same time, he was more afraid of Qingming. The 2 sides didn't want to waste more words. As Ichiro threw the kunai in his hand, the battle broke out instantly. Ding ding dang! Because 2 people had been killed before, Qingming was not under much pressure. The combined strength of the remaining 4 people was not as good as that of Konoha and Abuniga and others. Although he didn't plan to use the Mangekyo Sharingan this time, it didn't mean that the 4 people could hold on for too long. Just a few minutes later, he seized the opportunity and pierced one of them through the abdomen with a sword, severely injuring him. As a result, he also had a cut on his body. But this little wound was nothing in Qingming's eyes. Even the previous chest wound had healed in just a few minutes, not to mention such a small cut. Qingming avoided He Fang's powerful punch, formed seals with both hands, and instantly performed the palm immortal technique, injecting the condensed yang release chakra into the wound. Then, he faced several Iwagakure Jonin again. As the Iwagakure Jonin lost more members, his Sharingan illusion had more places to use, and the pressure on Ichiro and others increased sharply. Time passed by minute. After a few minutes, Qingming found another opportunity and cut off half of the shoulder of the last Iwagakure special Jonin with a sword, greatly reducing his combat power. At this time, the only 2 real Jonins who still maintained their full combat power on the Iwagakure Jonin were Ichiro and Kiriko. No, their state was not complete either. Qingming glanced and found that the chakra in their bodies was less than 1/3 of their heyday. In this state, if they compete with him, the opponent will definitely lose in the end. With this thought, Qingming was no longer in a hurry and started to waste time with the opponent. Of course, he was so leisurely because on other battlefields, with the addition of those Konoha Jonin, they have gradually turned the disadvantage around. Although the number of Iwagakure ninjas in the field still occupies an advantage, they have already fallen behind in morale. Especially on Qingming's side, he killed several Jonins in succession, which put great psychological pressure on many Iwagakure ninjas. In this case, they can only exert 60% to 70% of their full strength at most. In this way, coupled with the focused attacks of several other Konoha Jonins, the stronger Iwagakure ninjas dare not show up to boost morale, and the situation is even worse. It is precisely because of this that Qingming can be so leisurely to waste time with Ichiro and others. Of course, he can use the Mangekyo Sharingan to quickly kill the 2 men, and then rush into the Iwagakure ninja team to relieve the pressure on the Konoha ninjas. But why did he do this? Not to mention that using the Mangekyou Sharingan would permanently damage his eyes. Just being a babysitter is not his character. Yes, he intends to let his Konoha ninjas survive the Iwagakure raid, but he will never take on too much responsibility and do everything himself. At most, he gives them hope. As for whether they can survive in the end, it depends on their own abilities. This may kill more people, but Qingming has a clear conscience. Concentrating his mind, Qingming no longer thinks about it, and instead begins to wholeheartedly deal with Kurikal Ichiro and Kurofu, as well as another half-crippled Iwagakure special Jonin. This time, he rarely uses other means, mostly swordsmanship to fight the enemy, and only when he has no choice, will he use ninjutsu or illusion to rescue. As for the reason, of course, he wants to brush the proficiency of swordsmanship from them. Although it is a waste of time, chakra cannot be wasted in vain. It just so happens that his proficiency in swordsmanship has exceeded LV6, 6,000 10,000, and he is not far from the perfect state of LV7. Now there is a good opportunity to brush up his proficiency, so he will not miss it. Ding ding dong dong, the battle continued. Soon, Kurikal Ichiro, Hefeng and others found the problem, and then after observing again, they understood Qingming's plan. Well, he is using them as a whetstone. At this time, whether it is Kurikal Ichiro, Hefeng, or the half-crippled Iwagakure special ninja, they all got angry and attacked Qingming regardless of consumption. For a time, Qingming's pressure increased sharply, but because of this, his swordsmanship proficiency increased rapidly. Kurikal Ichiro and others would never think that as long as they are still giving Qingming pressure and fighting him, they are helping him brush up his proficiency. In fact, the closer they are to the limit of what Qingming's swordsmanship can handle, the better the effect. Feeling the killing intent from several people, Qingming almost laughed out loud, but in order to avoid them noticing, he still forced himself not to laugh. His tense face and the way he tried his best to resist gave Kurikal Ichiro and others hope, so they worked harder. Time passed by. Under such great pressure, Qingming's swordsmanship grew rapidly, and his proficiency accumulated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even so, it is obviously not realistic to accumulate 4,000 points of proficiency in one battle. What's more, Kurikal Ichiro and others' bursts also have limits. At a certain moment, Qingming suddenly felt the pressure on his body relieved. Looking closely, he saw Kurikal Ichiro and others sweating on their foreheads and panting, just like a weak appearance after the outbreak. Qingming's Sharingan moved slightly and swept towards their chests. It can be seen that after this round of consumption, their chakra is basically less than a quarter of its heyday. Look at the Iwagakure mid-level ninjas on the battlefield in the distance. Their morale, which had just been aroused by the outburst of Kurikal Ichiro and others, was suppressed by the Konoha Jonins, and their condition became even worse. The victory is determined. It's time to end this battle. Thinking this in his heart, Qingming no longer hesitated, and his whole body burst out with chakra. With a flash body technique, he rushed directly towards Kurikal Ichiro and others. After his full strength outburst, the first to suffer was the half-crippled Iwagakure special Jonin. Qingming found an opportunity to control him with a Jinjutsu, Sharingan, and then hide him in the chest with a Rasengan, and he fell to the ground seriously injured on the spot. As for Kurikal Ichiro and Hefeng, they also did not get a good deal. They were attracted by Qingming's momentum and wanted to escape, but in the hands of Qingming, who was out of his full strength, there was no chance to escape. Hefeng was cut off half of his neck by Qingming's wind-style, wind blade. Although he used the earth-style ninjutsu in time, he still couldn't block the attack of the wind blade. Facts have proved that Kurikal Ichiro did not deliberately set a trap for him before. Kurikal Ichiro's earth-style ninjutsu really couldn't prevent his wind blade attack. After killing Kurikal Ichiro was alone. After only a dozen rounds, Qingming found an opportunity. The moment the two sides' eyes crossed, Qingming used the magic, jail hang technique and controlled him in place in an instant. Swish! The short sword in his hand pierced straight out and instantly pierced the opponent's heart. With this, Kurikal Ichiro died. The last meaningful thing he did was, perhaps, at the last moment of his life, to give the order to retreat to the middle-level ninjas in the Iwagakure. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, A Tragic Victory and Orders. Retreat. Hearing Kuriko Ichiro's shrill cry before his death, the Iwagakure middle and low ninjas in the field were stunned for a moment, and then began to retreat together. Seeing this scene, the surviving Konoha ninjas used their means to block or chase. For a moment, the entire battlefield was more lively than before. However, because the initiative was on the Konoha side, the Iwagakure ninjas were generally more embarrassed and had more casualties. In the last wave alone, at least 30 or 40 Iwagakure ninjas were killed, and in the end, no more than 100 people were able to escape the pursuit and return to the Iwagakure headquarters alive. In other words, in this raid, the Iwagakure ninjas not only lost all the Jonin's, but also lost more than 2/3 of their team. Such losses are not small. However, Konoha also suffered a lot of losses. Of the 150 ninjas, it is estimated that no more than 50 survived. Even so, this was the result of Qingming killing many Iwagakure middle and low ninjas before. If he had not killed dozens of people at the beginning, Konoha's losses would have been even greater. After all, the rock ninjas came here to wipe out the Otani village stronghold, and they were well prepared. It was almost a miracle that Konoha had so many people alive and won the battle. No, it's not accurate to say it was a miracle. It should be said that it all relied on Qingming's extraordinary performance. Without him to wipe out the opponent's Jonin team, no matter how hard Konoha struggled, it would only end in failure. There was no other possibility. Although it was a miserable victory now, it was better than being completely wiped out, wasn't it? It was for this reason that after the battle, all the Konoha ninjas, whether they were Jonin, Chunin, or Sharingan, looked at Qingming with awe and gratitude. Or was because of his strength? Gratitude was because he saved everyone with his strength. However, Qingming didn't take these people's gratitude and awe to heart. Everything he did was just to follow his own wishes. If someone pissed him off one day, he wouldn't mind killing the other person. As for the other person's identity, he didn't care at all. The Hidden Leaf Village, in theory, cannot restrain him. Moreover, as his strength continues to improve, this restraint will become weaker and weaker. Again, his goal is the Sea of Stars. In his eyes, the ninja world is just a tiny place after all, and the ninja civilization can only develop because aliens planted a tree. Qingming sat on the roof, looking up at the starry sky, and his thoughts gradually drifted away. After an unknown amount of time, suddenly, a figure appeared beside him. The person who came was none other than one of the dozens of Konoha ninjas who survived during the day, and he was also a special Jonin. He came to Qingming and saw him looking up at the night sky. He did not make a sound to disturb him, and just stood quietly by the side. After a long time, when Qingming came to his senses, he stepped forward and said, "Captain, this is today's combat report." Then, he handed a document to Qingming. Qingming took the document, roughly scanned it, and signed his name after confirming that there was no problem. Then, he handed the document back to the Konoha Jonin in front of him and said, "No problem, just report it like this." "Yes, Captain," the Konoha Jonin responded and was about to leave. At this moment, Qingming suddenly called him. "Wait." The Konoha Jonin stopped and turned around and said, "Captain, is there anything else?" Qingming thought for a moment and said directly, "When you hand in the combat report, tell them that the Otani village stronghold can no longer be defended and they hope to evacuate immediately." Hearing this, the Konoha Jonin's expression froze, and he hesitated for a long time before saying, "Captain, do you really want to say that?" "Yes," Qingming nodded and said, "Just say that I said it." Hearing this, the Konoha Jonin was silent for a moment, and then said, "I know, Captain." After that, he used a flash body technique and left. Qingming certainly knew that what he said would definitely lower the evaluation of him by the Konoha high level, but not to mention that he didn't care about this at all. Even if the evaluation was low, it didn't matter. His identity as a member of the Uchiha clan alone meant that he would not have any good development under the current Konoha leadership. In this case, it would be better to do as he pleases. Qingming didn't want to end up defending the Otani village stronghold alone. It was a bit exaggerated to say this, but that's what I meant. If those guys saw that he was so powerful and squeezed him to death, that would be bad. Although this might improve his swordsmanship rapidly, it was not worth mentioning compared to the time and energy he wasted. So, it's better to say the ugly words in advance. I think the other party will understand what he means when they hear him. In a flash, time came to the next day. Qingming received a reply from Omura Yuto, or an order, and the other party hoped that he could hold on for another week. The letter vaguely mentioned that Fengli Town seemed to be preparing for an action, which would take some time. For this reason, Omura Yuto sent another 100 ninjas to him for support. Qingming thought about it and felt that after the disastrous defeat of the Rock Ninja, they would not launch another attack in a short time. After all, the Jonin is not a leak. After one crop is cut, there is another crop. It's okay to have a special Jonin with only one skill. With so many Chunins, some excellent seedlings can always be selected. However, it is not so easy to replenish fully developed Jonin. And with the strength he has shown so far, if the Hidden Rock Village wants to capture the Otani Village stronghold, in addition to filling it with the lives of a large number of middle and lower level ninjas, it can only mobilize more Jonin. For the former, Qingming can also apply for support. In the end, a small conflict may evolve into a large-scale battle, which is inconsistent with the overall strategic decision of the Hidden Rock Village to disperse and attack the outer strongholds of Fenglir Town. Therefore, it is highly likely that it will not be adopted. Then, the only thing left is soldiers against soldiers and generals against generals. To deal with Qingming, at least 4 Iwagakure Jonins must be mobilized, plus other Konoha Jonins in Otani Village. To capture this place, Iwagakure Village needs at least 7 or 8 Jonins. It is impossible to gather so many Jonins in a short time. At least it is impossible to gather them within a week. In this way, the mission of holding on for a week will not be so dangerous. Therefore, Qingming decided to accept the mission. Of course, if the Iwagakure Jonin showed any abnormality during this week, such as wanting to kill him at all costs, Qingming would not hold on to it. Compared with his life, a Otani Village stronghold is nothing, even if he is criticized for it. However, what makes him curious is what action is being prepared in Fengli Town. Isn't it another decapitation operation? Qingming muttered in a low voice. Chapter 265 Promotion. Time flows like water. In the blink of an eye, a week has passed. The worst situation expected did not happen. Although the Hidden Rock Village sent some people to the Otani Village, most of them were sentries, mainly responsible for surveillance. This made Qingming feel a little relieved, and also gave him a period of stable practice time again. So, Qingming kept an eye on the movements of the Rock Ninja and Fengli Town while practicing silently. After nearly 20 days of practice, he also felt that his body had reached a critical point again, and was only one step away from transformation. That night, in the room, Qingming was performing the palm immortal technique to strengthen his body, and suddenly felt an invisible force born from his body, trying to break through some shackles, but he could not succeed. Qingming knew that this was the opportunity for transformation. So, without any hesitation, he immediately opened the main Gekyo Sharingan. Then, a stream of blood flowed from his right eye, and the human control was instantly blessed on his body. In an instant, the shackles were wiped out, and the power of human defense began to guide his body to revolve in the direction he wanted. After a while, a warm current was born from his body and quickly flowed throughout his body. This familiar feeling, Qingming knew that he succeeded. Without rushing to enjoy it, Qingming first cancelled the blessing of human defense, and then closed the main Gekyo Sharingan. After doing this, he began to close his eyes and carefully feel the changes in his body. Time passed by minute. After about a quarter of an hour, the warm current disappeared, and Qingming opened his eyes. Immediately, a vigorous vitality emanated from him. Qingming thought for a moment, took out a kunai from the ninja tool bag, and then swish, cut a hole on his left arm. Qingming just looked at his arm quietly. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Soon, the wound stopped bleeding by itself. Then, it began to heal. Although the speed was not visible to the naked eye, Qingming could still feel that it was healing rapidly. The key point is that during the whole process, Qingming did not use any other means, including but not limited to performing medical ninjutsu, gathering chakra near the wound, etc. But even so, his wounds were still recovering quickly. There was only one explanation, that is, his own self-healing ability had improved. Although Qingming had known that this day would come with the improvement of the physique attribute, when this scene really happened, he couldn't help but get excited. Maybe his current self-healing ability is not as good as monsters like Naruto and Hashirama, but it's a start, isn't it? Qingming thought and gathered chakra near the wound. Suddenly, the injury on his arm recovered faster. Qingming felt that if it improved a little more, it would almost catch up with the effect of C-level medical ninjutsu healing technique. In other words, as long as the chakra is sufficient, He will be equivalent to carrying a weakened version of the healing technique anytime and anywhere in the future. The effect. Although it's just like that, but as I said, this is just a beginning. Without dealing with the injury on his arm for the time being, Qingming muttered to himself, "Panel." The next moment, a familiar light blue screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 12 years old. Constitution, 1415. Spirit, 19 chakra, 38,500, 4,264,448,980, bloodline, Sharingan, main Gekyo, 1/50000, 1217/50000, skills, chakra refining technique, LV5, 554/5000, LV5, 752/5000, wind style, wind blade, LV5, 870/5000, LV5, 1640, 5000, shadow clone technique, LV3, 340/1000, LV3, 720/1000, chakra absorption technique, LV5, 2750, 5000, LV5, 3550, 5000, Rasengan, LV5, 950/5000, LV5, 1720/5000, Palm Immortal Technique, LV7, 8210/20000, LV7, 12770/20000, Chakra Scalpel, LV4, 920/2000, LV5, 1200/5000, Heart Reflection Technique, LV7, 4886/20000, LV7, 8534/20000, Sword Technique, LV6, 5850/100000, LV6, 8120/100000, Phantom Sword Technique, LV3, 15/1000, LV3, 870/1000, Instant Sword Technique, LV1, 162/200, Chakra Control, LV5, 1450/5000, LV5, 1830/5000, Perfect Skills. Without any surprise, as his body transformed, his physique attribute increased a little, from 14 points to 15 points. And this is obviously a watershed. The changes in Qingming's body's self-healing ability tested above are only part of it. In addition, there are some more hidden changes. For example, the potential increase that occurs every time Qingming felt it carefully. Preliminary estimates show that his chakra theoretical upper limit has increased by 20,000 points, from the previous 120,000 points to the current 140,000 points. There is no doubt that this is a huge improvement. There are two reasons for such a big increase. One is that 15 points of physique is indeed a watershed. The second is that his spiritual attribute has skyrocketed before, but because the physique attribute is too low, a large part of the potential has been hidden. And now, with the improvement of the physique attribute, part of this potential has been released. The combination of the two will naturally increase greatly. The chakra recovery speed has also increased greatly. Before, apart from the 18,000 chakras restored by practicing the chakra refining technique for 9 hours a day, his body could only restore 67,000 chakras a day. Now, this number has become 80,000. In this way, taking into account the 15 points of constitution, he can practice the chakra refining technique for 2 more hours a day. So, adding them together, it is 102,000 chakras. This number is 17,000 more than the previous 85,000 points, which is a big improvement. How to distribute so much chakra is also a problem. On the main body side, the time for practicing the palm immortal technique and the heart reflection technique is basically full, so there is no need to allocate more chakra. Qingming thought about it and decided to evenly distribute the newly added chakra to the wind-style wind blade and the Rasengan. Anyway, these two skills are handled by the shadow clones. If there is not enough time, then the number of shadow clones can be increased. Therefore, there is no need to worry about allocating too much chakra to them. Qingming secretly estimated that with the addition of these 17,000 chakra points, his wind style, wind blade, and Rasengan should be able to gain more than 200 points of proficiency every day in the future. In this way, It won't be long before their levels can be raised again. Qingming nodded with satisfaction, then moved his eyes away from the basic attributes and looked at the bloodline column. It can be seen that after more than 20 days of practicing the reflection heart technique and the guidance of human control, the progress bar of his main Gekyo Sharingan has moved almost 2.4%. Although this speed is not very fast, it is not too slow. At this speed, if everything goes well, it will take no more than 2.5 years for his main Gekyo Sharingan to successfully advance. Of course, this is the result of everything going well. If it doesn't go well, it's hard to say. Thinking of this, Qingming unconsciously touched his right eye. Because of the frequent use of human control, the vision of his right eye has declined slightly. Although he has tried his best to control the time and frequency of performing human defense, this bad situation still happened. Now, Qingming is worried that his right eye will go blind before his main Gekyo Sharingan is advanced. If that happens, it will be a big trouble. Without the guidance of human defense, his main Gekyo Sharingan is likely to be stuck at the last bit of progress and unable to break through. Therefore, some solutions must be found. After thinking for a long time, Qingming finally decided to reduce the use of human defense and physical strengthening and instead focus more on practicing reflection of the heart. In this way, perhaps the speed of his physique improvement will be reduced, but when the main Gekyo Sharingan is advanced later, the resistance should be reduced a lot. Chapter 266 Breaking News. After checking the progress of the main Gekyo, Qingming turned his attention to the chakra column. It can be seen that compared with 22 days ago, his chakra limit has increased by 6,336 points, directly from 42,644 points to 48,980 points. With nearly 50,000 points of chakra, 99% of the people in the ninja world do not have as much chakra as him. After that, his chakra limit will increase by 352, equals 3211, points every day. In other words, about every month, his chakra will increase by 1 card, which brings him 1 step closer to Chaitanya. In addition, because of the frequent treatment of the wounded in the past few days, he has also brushed up a lot of proficiency in palm immortal technique and chakra scalpel. Let's not talk about the former. In order to strengthen his body, he has worked hard on this skill, and the proficiency gained by healing people is nothing. But the latter is different. Qingming will not take the initiative to grind its proficiency now. But even so, his level was still raised by 1 level, and his proficiency increased from LV4, 920/2000, to LV5, 1200, 5000. This allowed him to use the chakra scalpel again, not only faster, but also with higher control accuracy. Whether it is used for fighting or saving people, it is much more convenient. In addition, because of frequent battles, his proficiency in swordsmanship and illusion swordsmanship has also improved a lot. The former has been raised from LV6, 5,850 10,000, to LV6, 8,120/10000, and is only less than 2,000 points away from being promoted to LV7. The latter has been raised from LV3, 15 out of 1,000, to LV3, 870/1000, and is only 1 step away from LV4. However, the instant swordsmanship, which was developed at the same time as the illusion swordsmanship, cannot be practiced because the short sword in his hand cannot transmit chakra. Therefore, its proficiency is still only LV1, 162 out of 200, so far. Qingming estimated that he would have to wait until he found the Kusanagi sword he was looking for before he could continue to improve. It's been a month, and I haven't seen any news from the Uchiha clan. I don't know if they have found it, Qingming murmured, and with a thought, he closed the proficiency panel. The above are his gains in the past 20 days. In general, although many plans were disrupted by the attack of the rock ninja, the overall progress of practice has not fallen behind. Not bad. After muttering for the last time, Qingming closed his eyes and continued to practice today. Although it was already late, he still didn't plan to sleep. Practice is the accumulation of little by little. If you can't persevere, it will eventually be in vain. While Qingming was practicing, the action planned by Fengliu Town also began, in the second half of the night. Qingming had just fallen asleep for a while, and suddenly felt an extremely violent breath. He opened his eyes suddenly, grabbed the short sword beside him, got up and went out, and after a few jumps, he came to the highest point of the village. He looked towards the northwest, where the violent aura came from. And that was the direction of Fengliu Town. At the same time, he was also familiar with that aura, which was the aura emitted when the Four Tails exploded its chakra. This place was more than 20 kilometers away from Fengliu town. The only possibility for the aura to be transmitted over such a long distance was that the Four Tails had lost control again. Qingming frowned, not knowing what was happening over there. The terrain of Xiaogu village was too low, and even if he stood at the highest point of the village, he could not see any movement. Qingming simply gave orders to the several Konoha Jonin who had hurried over, asking them to appease the middle and lower level ninjas, and then he left the village. A few minutes later, Qingming came to a nearby high mountain. Standing on the top of the treetops and looking into the distance, he could vaguely see a huge humanoid creature wantonly destroying the surrounding environment. Sharingan. Suddenly, Qingming opened the main Gekyo Sharingan. Now, he could see more clearly. Just as he thought, the humanoid creature was the Four Tails, Sun Wukong, whose fiery red hair was extremely conspicuous. At this time, the other party beat his chest and roared, as if he was going crazy. Although it was unclear what happened over there, Qingming's intuition told him that this must be related to the plan vaguely mentioned in Omura Yuto's previous letter. However, it seems that their plan has most likely failed. Otherwise, it would not have turned out like this. Despite this, he still didn't plan to go there. Not to mention that this plan has nothing to do with him, he doesn't need to participate in it, and the time alone is not enough. The distance is more than 20 kilometers. By the time he rushes over, the place may have been blocked by the rock ninjas, and it won't be of much use for him to go there. As for capturing the other party as a chakra battery, Qingming really thought about it, but he gave up after just thinking about it. First of all, although he can now forcibly control the tailed beast with a main Gekyo Sharingan, he has no more means of clamping. In this case, even if he catches it, it is not very safe. Secondly, under the watchful eyes of the public, it is not easy for him to attack the Four Tails, because this will expose his main Gekyo Sharingan. Even if no one is paying attention, let alone the current situation, he does not intend to attack the Four Tails and the Five Tails. There is no other reason. The Four Tails and the Five Tails exist in the form of Jinchuuriki. Capturing them means that Lao Zi and Han must be clamped. This will undoubtedly increase the uncertainty, and Qingming does not want to take this risk. So, does he not plan to capture the tail beast? The answer is of course no. In fact, he already has an ideal target in his heart, that is the Seven Tails, Qingming. According to the age of the Seven Tails Jinchuuriki Fu in later generations, she should not be born yet. Qingming has not heard of other predecessors of the Seven Tails, so it is likely that it is now sealed in some artifact. This is convenient for him to steal and use. In addition, the Tokigakure village that owns the Seven Tails is just a small ninja village. Even if there are any loopholes in his actions, there is no need to worry about safety issues. Therefore, on the whole, capturing the Seven Tails is definitely the best choice. In addition to the seven-tailed beast, Qingming has an alternative target. That's right, that is the three-tailed beast who will be resurrected in 3 years, Isabashi. Soon, Nahurin will be temporarily transformed into the three-tailed Jinchuuriki by the Kurigakure Anbu secretly controlled by Uchiha Madara. After she sacrifices herself in Kakashi's hands, the three-tailed beast in her body will enter the resurrection stage. And Qingming can secretly seize this wild-tailed beast. The only uncertainty is that the opponent's resurrection location is yet to be determined, and he may not be able to find it. Therefore, Qingming's primary target is still the seven-tailed beast. Of course, whether it is stealing the seven-tailed beast or capturing the three-tailed beast, we have to wait until the end of this ninja world war, otherwise there is no time at all. And looking at the current situation, the war should be over in no more than half a year. By then, he will have more free time and can do what he wants. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Qingming closed the main Gekyo, and looked into the distance with a 3 Magatama Sharingan, waiting for a result. Chapter 267 News and Evacuation. 2 hours later. With the rise of a huge ceiling array, the huge body of the Four Tails was restrained, and then quickly shrank and disappeared. No, to be more precise, it did not disappear, but was sealed back into Lao Zi's body. It was just that Qingming was too far away from it, and Lao Zi's body was too small, so it seemed to disappear in Qingming's eyes. Feeling the oppressive breath in the air disappear, Qingming retracted his side and returned to the Otani village base. "Captain, did you find anything?" As soon as he came back, several Konoha Jonin came forward to ask. Qingming shook his head and said nothing more, just said, it is the four tails of the hidden rock village that is out of control. You arrange the patrol and guards and go back to rest. Other things will be discussed tomorrow. After hearing this, several Konoha Jonin looked at each other and said goodbye. Now, no one regards Qingming as a 12-year-old child. As his strength continues to show, his power is getting heavier, and these special Jonin dare not go against his will. Therefore, after hearing his words, even if there are still many doubts in my heart, I can only suppress them for the time being. The reason why Qingming didn't want to say too much was that it was unnecessary, and secondly, many things were his guesses. He didn't want to say more about things without basis. Therefore, let's see what the above said about the specific situation. Qingming believed that this time would not be too late. As it turned out, Omura Yuto's reaction was faster than he expected, as if he had been prepared in advance. He received the news almost at dawn. Qingming took the intelligence from a messenger Chunin and browsed it quickly. As he browsed, he finally had a more detailed understanding of the situation last night. As he expected, the loss of control of the four-tailed beast last night was indeed related to their actions. And their actions, as he expected before, were still beheading operations. That is, in the current situation, apart from beheading, there seems to be no other way to effectively stop the advancement of the hidden rock village. In the final analysis, the competition between the two villages still has to compete with hard power. Some small calculations and tricks may achieve a temporary victory, but they will never achieve the final victory. On this front, Konoha is now in a position of overall weakness, so it can only take the decapitation operation as a low-cost and effective way to delay. However, unlike the command system against the Rock Ninja last time, this time Omura Yuto set the decapitation target on Laozi and on. As the Four Tails Jinchuriki and the Five Tails Jinchuriki, once they die, the Four Tails and the Five Tails will enter the resurrection stage. Without the existence of these two killers, the momentum of the Rock Village's attack will definitely be frustrated, or even stop. In this way, they have a chance to breathe. It has to be said that if the plan is really successful, the situation may really change. But the problem is that this plan failed. It is not clear whether there is a problem with the intelligence transmitted by the undercover, or whether the Rock Village accidentally arranged more guards. In short, last night's action was exposed in advance. In the end, even with the shadow-level master Minato Namikaze personally taking action, he failed to complete the decapitation of the target. However, their actions are not without gain. At least, the Four Tails were once again out of control by them. Although the action team paid the price of 2 real Jonin and 4 special Jonin's lives, the loss of the Rock Ninja was undoubtedly greater. After all, the Four Tails went out of control in their camp. Even though the Rock Ninja leaders had long been prepared for such a thing to happen and arranged the residences of Laozi and Han to be relatively remote. However, given the huge size of the Four Tails, that little distance is not a problem at all. In this way, plus the price paid for resealing the Four Tails later, at least 200 or 300 Rock Ninjas were killed last night. After seeing the village's estimated report, Qingming finally understood why so many people were prejudiced against the Jinchuriki. It would be uncomfortable for anyone to die in such a situation where a large number of people die due to loss of control. After all, these people are not alone, they also have their own relatives and friends. They died at the hands of the Jinchuriki. Don't their relatives and friends have any opinions? Therefore, it is almost inevitable that the Jinchuriki is hostile to the villagers. After all, which village has never lost control of the Jinchuriki? Hey, I'm getting off topic. Let's see how Omura Yuto arranges it next. Thinking like this, Qingming continued to look at the intelligence in his hand. When he saw the other party's next arrangement, he knew that his feeling was not wrong. Omura Yuto was indeed prepared for the failure of the mission. According to the other party's order, all the peripheral strongholds must be evacuated within 1 day, and all personnel will gather in Fengliu town. Then, all personnel will move to the stronghold further behind. In other words, the Fengliu town stronghold will be abandoned. Qingming did not find this result strange. As a senior ninja, he knew much more information than ordinary Konoha ninjas, and knew that the defense force of Fengliu town had already reached its limit. Especially in the past month, the Hidden Rock Village frantically attacked the outer strongholds of Fengliu town, continuously bleeding the Fengliu town stronghold, which made their manpower even more tense. In this case, continuing to persist would mean chronic death. It is estimated that Omura Yuto also saw this, so he planned last night's action and made preparations for both. If it succeeds, it is estimated that he will hold on, but if it fails, it will be like this now, everyone retreats together. Of course, this must have been discussed with a rear base camp. Otherwise, how could Omura Yuto, the commander of a mere frontline stronghold, have the right to make such a big strategic adjustment? You know, if they withdraw, other strongholds on the same front line will also have to withdraw, which is equivalent to the entire front line moving backwards. In this case, if the headquarters did not agree, Omura Yuto would never dare to issue this order. And now, this order has come down, which means that the headquarters is ready to shrink the defense line as a whole. It's just the time. Qingming looked at the 2-day evacuation time, frowned, and thought to himself, isn't this time too short? 1 day to withdraw to the Fengliu town stronghold, and 1 day to move to the rear, wouldn't it be a non-stop job? However, since the higher-ups have notified him so, he can only execute it. Putting away the intelligence in his hand, Qingming sent away the messenger Chunin, and immediately notified several Jonin in the stronghold to come over and assign tasks. When they heard that they were going to evacuate, although they were surprised, they didn't say much, and they all went down to prepare. At noon that day, everyone in the base packed up their things, leaving no supplies for the Hidden Rock village. They took everything with them and rushed to the Fengliu town base more than 20 kilometers away. Originally, Qingming was worried that the Hidden Rock village would come forward to intercept them. But it turned out that he was overthinking. The Hidden Rock ninjas were also overwhelmed by the Four Tails out of control incident last night, and had no time and energy to take care of them. So, they arrived at the Fengliu town base smoothly. Chapter 268 Arrival. After a month, Qingming returned to Fengliu town and had only one feeling, that is, it was much more desolate here. In the past, although there were no civilians here, it was quite lively because there were many Konoha ninjas gathered here. Now, even though many ninjas from the outer strongholds have withdrawn here, there are still not many people. This shows how much they have lost in the past month. No wonder the headquarters will shrink the front line. In this situation, if they hold on, they will eventually lose. It is better to concentrate their forces and defend the defense line further back. However, Qingming looked at the depressed atmosphere around the team and felt that the defense line behind would not be able to hold for too long. The war that lasted for more than 2 years has almost squeezed out the potential of Konoha. If it continues like this, I am afraid that it will end up with a lack of successors. Sarutobi Hirozen, you can say he is indecisive or he is two-faced, but you can't deny his political vision. Whether it is selecting the successor to the Hokage or balancing the interests of all parties in the village, he has done a good job. Therefore, if Qingming could find such a simple problem, there was no reason why the other party would not find it. And this was probably the main reason why the other party later resisted the pressure from Shimura Danzo and forcibly ended the war. Shaking his head, Qingming stopped thinking about these things and turned back to his residence. He began to practice as soon as possible. In the evening, he had a meeting to attend. However, Qingming estimated that it was most likely to share the tasks. With so many people moving together, guarding was a problem, and a strong Jonin like him would definitely be assigned a lot of tasks. By then, there would not be many opportunities to practice. So, hurry up and practice. In a flash, an afternoon passed. Night fell. Qingming walked into the meeting room. There were fewer familiar faces and more unfamiliar faces. These Jonin who had never been seen were most likely the Jonin who had been stationed in the outer strongholds before. And the familiar faces that disappeared were basically killed in the battle. Qingming paused slightly, and then walked to his seat naturally. During the period, some Jonins nodded to him, and he responded one by one. Some people cast curious glances, but Qingming chose to ignore them. After he sat down, more people came over one after another. When everyone was almost there, Omura Yuto also arrived. He didn't greet or talk nonsense, and he directly assigned tasks to everyone. There was no surprise. Qingming was assigned to the extremely dangerous reconnaissance team. Of course, Omura Yuto arranged this not because he valued his reconnaissance ability, but because he wanted him to protect the accompanying Hyuga clan ninjas. The main person responsible for reconnaissance was the other party, and he was just a bodyguard. Qingming was very satisfied with this. Although this task was a bit dangerous, he didn't have to worry about too many things, so he agreed on the spot. Soon, everyone's tasks were assigned, and after confirming that there were no problems, Omura Yuto directly announced the end of the meeting. This meeting was almost the shortest meeting Qingming had attended, and here, I have to give a thumbs up to the efficiency of the ninjas. After leaving the meeting room, Qingming directly found a special Jonin of the Hyuga clan, who is his next partner and an acquaintance of his. Linghuo, yes, this person is Hyuga Linghuo. They were partners under Naruto, and now they are going to carry out a mission together again. Qingming, hearing Qingming's call, Hyuga Linghuo also raised his hand and greeted him. It must be said that the other party is really lucky. After several months, he is still alive. This is not that he curses the other party or looks down on him, but just as he said just now, the reconnaissance mission is a relatively high-risk mission. Hyuga Linghuo has been carrying out this kind of mission for many years, and it is indeed not easy to survive until now. The two chatted briefly about their recent situation, then packed up their things, left Fengliu town together, and walked towards the rear base. As a reconnaissance team, they naturally have to set off earlier than the main force, so that they can explore the situation along the way and then give timely feedback to the main force. However, to Qingming's surprise, the rock ninja still did not choose to stop them this time. When the various outposts on the periphery gathered towards Fengliu town, the rock ninja did not stop them. Now that they are all about to withdraw, the rock ninja still did not stop them. At this point, Qingming finally understood why Omura Yudo had arranged the time so tightly. It turned out that he wanted the rock ninja to give up the pursuit. Indeed, in just one day, it was good enough for the rock ninja to deal with the mess left by the Four-Tails Jinchuriki, who lost control. How could they have the energy to organize people to stop their retreat? Moreover, even if they wanted to stop them, they had to be able to do it. They could act so quickly because Omura Yudo had been prepared for it. And it was simply impossible for the rock ninja to suddenly organize a similar number of people to intercept. As for sending a small force to delay, that was even more nonsense. Not to mention Namuke's Minato, who could fight 100 with 1, even Qingming himself could kill 7 in and 7 out in such a small-scale battle. And the information about them must have been on the desk of the rock ninja commander. Therefore, unless the rock ninja commander lost his mind, he would never do this. After thinking about this clearly, Qingming immediately put his heart at ease, and even had extra thoughts to perform the palm immortal technique on the way to strengthen his body. Although Hyuga Linghuo was very curious about his actions, he did not ask out of respect. However, when he occasionally opened his Byakugan to observe the surrounding situation, he was still shocked by Qingming's growth. 4 months ago, Qingming's strength was very strong, but it was still within the range of ordinary people. But now, his chakra alone has almost doubled compared to before, not to mention the sense of oppression that is faintly emanating from his body. Hyuga Linghuo felt that in the entire Fengliu town, the only one who could surpass Qingming in terms of strength was probably the Yellow Flash, Namuke's Minato. It must be said that his intuition was very accurate. Not to mention the Fengliu town stronghold, even in the entire Konohagakure village, the only people that Qingming can see are Sarutobi Hiruzen, Namuke's Minato, and the 3 ninjas. As for the others, including Danzo, they are not worth mentioning. In fact, even these people may not be able to beat him for sure. At least, before his left eye was blinded, with the aim no mi, no one could beat him for sure. Compared to these people, what Qingming lacks now is the foundation, that is, the accumulation of various ninjutsu and the development of other attribute chakras. When he makes up for these shortcomings, he can basically be regarded as a true cage-level strongman. And when he upgrades the main Gekkai Sharingan to the level of the Eternal Eye, and then develops Susanoo to the complete state, even if the 5 cage join forces, they may not be his opponent. And this time will not be too long. Qingming, we are here. Just when Qingming was daydreaming, Hinata Linghuo's voice suddenly came. Chapter 269, half a month. Before they knew it, it was already the afternoon of the next day. Qingming and Hyuga Linghuo also arrived at the target base, which was a small town about 100 kilometers behind Fengliu town, called Shuang Town. This town is located on a plain, and there are 2 rivers meeting outside, so it is named Shuang Town. Next, they need to defend the entire front line with a small town base as the core. Of course, it is not only them who are responsible for the defense, but also the second-line troops originally located here. Standing on the top of the mountain, looking at Shuang Town from a distance, Qingming did not choose to go over, but said to Hyuga Linghuo, "Linghuo, take a look, is there any problem?" Although he can roughly see the situation of the town with the help of the Sharingan, and is basically sure that there is no problem there, but just in case, it is safer to let Hyuga Lingharo take a look. After all, the Byakugan is professional in this area. Hearing his words, Hyuga Lingharo didn't say anything nonsense, nodded, raised his hand directly to concentrate, and opened the Byakugan. In an instant, veins popped up beside his eyes, and a faint blue hue appeared in the pure white pupils of Hinata Lingharo, and a black mark appeared. This was the sign of the opening of the Byakugan. Qingming glanced at it and then retracted his gaze. On the side, Hinata Lingharo looked at Shuangtown from a distance. After a moment, he closed his Byakugan, nodded at Qingming, and said, "No problem." Hearing this, Qingming was completely relieved and said, "Well, just send a message to the main force and say that everything is normal." "Okay," Hinata Lingharo responded, quickly took out a pen and paper, and explained the situation here. Then, he took out a palm-sized green bird from his arms and stuffed the information into the letter box on its leg. Then, he threw it with both hands and let it fly away. The messenger bird flapped its wings, circled in the air for a few times, and after making a crisp bird cry, it flew in the direction it came from. This is the summoned beast of a Konoha ninja in a large army. Although it has no combat power, it is very useful for transmitting information. When it flew out of sight, Hyuga Lingharo retracted his gaze, looked at Qingming, pointed at Shuangtown, and said, "Qingming, are we going over there?" Hearing this, Qingming pondered for a moment, and finally shook his head and said, "Forget it, let's wait for the large army to come, and then go together." This is not that Qingming is worried about any problems in Shuangtown. After checking with his Sharingan and Hyuga Lingharo's Byakugan, if there are still problems, then these two great pupil techniques will be wasted. Qingming is mainly afraid of trouble. Although there is no problem with their reconnaissance team's credentials to enter the town in the end, verification will take time after all. Qingming didn't want to waste this time and energy, so he simply waited for the large army to come, and then went in together. Anyway, it wouldn't take too long. About 2 hours later, near dusk, accompanied by the sound of wheels rolling, the large army finally arrived. That is to say, the large army is full of ninjas, and their physical strength is far superior to that of ordinary people. Otherwise, it would take at least 2 or 3 days to transport such a large amount of supplies from Fengliu town, which is 100 kilometers away. And what about them? It only took more than 10 hours, which is quite fast. When the team approached, Qingming and Hinata Lingharo appeared, and after verifying their identities, they rejoined the team. The large force continued to move forward, and soon they were discovered by the patrol team from Shuangtown, and the two sides began to negotiate. There is one advantage of joining the large force, that is, Qingming does not have to worry about miscellaneous matters, and there are corresponding personnel to come forward. Soon, the negotiations between the two sides were completed, and Qingming and others entered Shuangtown in a short time. Looking at this town, which is slightly larger than Fengliu town, Qingming thought to himself, "I don't know how long this town can be defended." Time flies, and the years pass by. In the blink of an eye, half a month has passed. Since entering Shuangtown, the war seems to have been far away from them. For a full half-month, Qingming has not received any combat missions. However, he knew that this was just an illusion. The reason why the past half-month was so peaceful was that the Rock Ninja was still digesting the newly acquired territory and rebuilding the defense line. After completing these tasks, they will certainly be greeted by more fierce attacks. But no matter what, he at least got a rare period of peaceful training time. Qingming did not waste this time. Every day he was either practicing or on the way to practice, and he seemed extremely busy. To this, other people were not surprised. At most, they sighed. No wonder he has such strength at such a young age. It turns out that it is all due to hard work. Even because of his leadership, some ninjas practiced harder than before. However, these have nothing to do with Qingming. He still does his own things every day, meticulously implements his own training plan, and silently improves the level of each skill. This evening, on a low mountain not far from Shuangtown, Qingming sat cross-legged on a huge rock, performing the reflection heart technique over and over again, driving the continuous evolution of the Sharingan. In the woods not far behind him, 4 shadow clones each occupied an area, thinking and practicing wind style, wind blade and Rasengan. Unlike the quietness of the main body, the shadow clones were making a lot of noise. From time to time, 1 or 2 wind blades would fly out, or there would be the sound of a Rasengan hitting the target. The nearby trees and the earth were already riddled with holes under the destruction of these two skills, as if they had experienced a war. As for the noise made by the shadow clones, Qingming seemed to be completely unaware of it, and still sat there quietly. This perfect fusion of movement and stillness, any painter who came here would have to praise the good artistic conception, and then quickly pick up the pen to paint and record this scene. Unfortunately, no one dared to spy on Qingming's training range, so naturally there were no painters. Tick 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 tick. I don't know how long it has been. Qingming suddenly stopped practicing the reflection heart technique and looked back at the 4 shadow clones who were practicing in the forest. With a thought, he lifted the shadow clone technique. Then, the 4 figures turned into 4 groups of chakra smoke. Then, a lot of practice experience and memories poured into Qingming's mind. With a strong spirit and will, Qingming suppressed the discomfort in his mind and began to organize and absorb these experiences and memories. As this process progressed, the proficiency behind wind style, wind blade and Rasengan on his panel began to increase rapidly. Time passed by minute by minute. At a certain moment, a sense of enlightenment suddenly emerged in his mind. Qingming carefully comprehended it and suddenly felt that his understanding of wind style, wind blade had risen to a higher level. Chapter 270 Getting Started. Panel. After a while, Qingming opened his eyes, and then he opened the proficiency panel. The next moment, the familiar light blue screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 12 years old. Constitution, 15 spirit, 19 chakra, 32,600, 4,898,054,964, bloodline, Sharingan, Mangekyo, 1217, 50,000, 2,177/50000, skills, chakra refining technique, LV5, 752/5000, LV5, 939, 5,000, wind style, wind blade, LV5, 1640, 5,000, LV6, 1/10000, shadow clone technique, LV3, 720/1000, LV3, 965/1000, chakra absorption technique, LV5, 3,550/5000, Rasengan, LV5, 1720, 5,000, LV6, 120/10000, palm immortal technique, LV7, 12770/20000, LV7, 16610/20000, chakra scalpel, LV5, 1200/5000, heart reflecting technique, LV7, 8534/20000, LV7, 11414/20000, sword technique, LV6, 8120/100000, LV6, 9050/100000, illusion sword technique, LV3, 870/1000, LV4, 350/2000, instant sword technique, LV1, 162/200, chakra control, LV5, 1830/5000, LV5, 2050/5000, perfect skills, just as I felt just now. After this round of training, his wind style, wind blade was indeed upgraded by 1 level. At present, its proficiency has reached level 6, 1/10000. In addition to wind style, wind blade, Rasengan, a skill that he has also invested a lot of resources in, has also broken through level 5. At present, its proficiency has reached level 6, 120/10000. At this point, Qingming feels that he can try to develop wind style, Shuriken. Because whether it is Rasengan as the base or wind style as the filler, his understanding has basically reached the requirements. In fact, there is still a lot of room. In this case, it is completely possible to try. Anyway, the principle of wind style, Shuriken is in his mind, and he just needs to advance step by step. Qingming pondered for a moment and felt that there was no problem, so he included it in his training plan. In addition, he drew 5,000 chakra points from wind style, wind blade and Rasengan and allocated them to it. With an investment of 10,000 chakra points every day and a clear understanding of the principle, Qingming feels that it will not take long for him to successfully get started. By then, he will have another killer move. As an S-level forbidden technique, the lethality of wind style, Shuriken is unquestionable. and this will completely make up for his lack of strong attack means. Retracting his thoughts, Qingming looked at the other skills on the panel. Not to mention palm immortal technique and reflection heart technique, the proficiency of both is very stable. One is about 240 points per day, and the other is 192 points. It's the shadow clone technique. Because he needs to frequently use shadow clones to practice wind style, wind blade and Rasengan, his proficiency has increased a lot. Now, his proficiency has reached level 3, 965/1000. According to the current progress, Qingming estimates that he should be able to successfully advance in 2 or 3 days at most. And swordsmanship. Although due to the lack of actual combat training, the proficiency growth is a bit slow. However, with his unremitting practice, he still managed to reach level 6, 9050/10,000, and he was only 1000 points away from the next level. In this way, he could advance in half a month at most. The illusion sword technique developed on it has already been promoted. In half a month, its proficiency went directly from level 3, 870/1000, to level 4, 350/2000, and its practicality was further enhanced. Qingming estimated that if he used this sword technique against the enemy now, it would not only make the enemy dazed for a moment. Ninjas below the level of Jonin, who are not determined, would probably fall into the illusion and be slaughtered by him. Even Jonin would be affected by such sword technique. In this way, combined with the card vision tactic, one-on-one, even without using the main Gekyo Sharingan, Qingming could now easily defeat or even kill a Jonin. However, these were just icing on the cake for him, because his goal was no longer on these Jonin, but on the more advanced cage-level combat power. Now, unless multiple Jonin attacked him at the same time, he would not care at all. After taking a last look at the unchanged instant sword technique, Qingming retracted his sight, closed the proficiency panel, and began to practice again. However, this time he created 5 shadow clones, 4 of which were still practicing wind style, wind blade and Rasengan, and the remaining one began to ponder wind style, Shuriken. As for himself, he continued to perform palm immortal technique and reflection heart technique, strengthening his body while promoting the evolution of Sharingan. In a flash, time came to 2 days later. Without any surprise, his shadow clone technique was successfully upgraded, and the level was raised from LV3, 965/1000, to LV4, 1/2000. Thanks to this, the maximum number of shadow clones he could create also increased from 10 to 15. In addition, the chakra consumed by performing this technique also changed from 8 points of the chakra possessed by all the shadow clones before to 7 points. Although the reduction of 1 percentage point per person at a time is not much, it can still save some chakra if it is repeated many times. Especially now that he needs to frequently perform the shadow clone technique to practice skills, the effect will be more obvious. In addition, with the improvement of the level of the shadow clone technique, the stability of the shadow clones created by performing this technique will be improved again. In this way, when practicing the wind style, Shuriken, it can also last longer. That's right, after 2 days of exploration, he has successfully mastered the wind style, Shuriken. This speed is much faster than Naruto. Back then, Naruto created thousands of shadow clones and spent several days to successfully master it. And what about him? With only 1 shadow clone, it took only 2 days to succeed. There are 3 reasons for such a big gap. First, Naruto did not have a complete idea before practicing, and he knew nothing about the changes in the form and nature of wind attribute chakra, so he needed to explore step by step. Secondly, the existence of the tailed beast chakra makes Naruto's control of his own chakra very ordinary, and he needs a lot of practice to make up for this shortcoming. Thirdly, his foundation is not well laid, and his proficiency in the Rasengan is average. It naturally takes more energy to develop the wind-style Shuriken on it. However, these problems do not exist in Qingming. In fact, it is his advantage. Because whether it is thinking, chakra control, or proficiency in the Rasengan, Qingming now far exceeds Naruto at that time. In this way, it is not difficult to understand why he got started so quickly. However, after getting started, a problem arose, that is, before the completion of wind-style Shuriken reaches 100%, whether it is practiced or used, it will damage the cells and chakra meridians of the caster's own arm. And this, for the shadow clone, is equivalent to destroying the body structure, and naturally cannot support it for too long. Therefore, Every few practices will collapse. At this time, Qingming needs to recast the shadow clone technique to supplement it. But this will not only consume more chakra, but also be very troublesome. Now, with a successful advancement of the shadow clone technique, the shadow clones created by this technique are more stable. In this way, they can last longer. In this way, although it is not possible to maximize the use of the chakra in the shadow clone's body, the loss has been reduced to an acceptable level. Qingming nodded with satisfaction and then began to practice again. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Transfer Order. Another day later. In the morning. On a low hill. Qingming was practicing as usual. Suddenly, a figure came quickly from a distance. Although Qingming was practicing, he did not relax his perception of the surroundings. Therefore, he found the other party at the first time, then interrupted his practice and lifted the shadow clone technique. Suddenly, he was the only one left in the field. After waiting for a while, the figure came in front of him. Qingming recognized the other party and knew that he was a messenger Chunin under Omura Yudo. Tajima Yasuke forced himself to ignore the battlefield-like environment around him, and came straight to Qingming, respectfully saying, "Qingming Junin, the captain asked you to go back immediately." "Let me go back." Qingming frowned slightly when he heard this, and asked, "Do you know what it is?" Tajima Yasuke shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Seeing this, Qingming thought, could it be that the rock ninja has made some unusual movements? But according to the latest intelligence yesterday, the rock ninja seems to have not yet completed its deployment. They shouldn't launch an attack so quickly. What on earth is going on? Qingming was full of doubts. Just as he was thinking, Tajima Yasuke's voice came again, "Qingming Junin." Oh, Qingming came back to his senses and stopped thinking about it. He got up and packed up his equipment, and then returned to Shuang Town with the other party. He finally figured it out. Instead of making random guesses here, it would be better to go back and ask Omura Yudo directly, so as to save him from wasting brain cells. Half an hour later. In Shuang Town. Qingming walked out of the command center with a suspicious look on his face. From Omura Yudo, he already knew that the other party was so anxious to call him back, not because there was any unusual movement on the rock ninja side, but because the base camp had just sent a transfer order for him to return to the base camp immediately. As for what to do after returning, the transfer order did not specify, but just asked him to go back as soon as possible. This made Qingming more confused. Inexplicably, Qingming had a bad feeling in his heart, as if someone was plotting against him in secret. Although it was just an intuition, for some reason, Qingming always felt that this was the truth. But no matter how much he thought about it, he did not connect this matter with the urgent call back from the base camp. Am I suffering from paranoia? Qingming laughed at himself. But no matter what, he must be more careful next time. Although there are not many people in the ninja world who can beat him with his current strength, just in case, he should be cautious when he should act. Qingming does not want to capsize in the gutter. By the way, he also wants to know who is plotting against him behind his back. I hope it's not you, Qingming muttered, and a sinister face flashed through his mind. After returning to his residence, Qingming quickly packed up his luggage, then left Shuang Town and rushed to the base camp. Time goes back one day. Base camp. Inside the command center. After finishing his official duties for the day, Orochimaru rubbed his temples tiredly, drank a sip of water, and returned to his residence. However, as soon as he lifted the curtain of the tent, his steps stopped, and a dangerous light suddenly flashed in his eyes. But the next moment, he seemed to have discovered something, and then he returned to normal. Orochimaru walked into the tent, lowered the curtain, and sat quietly at the table. The tent was dark, without a single sound. After a long time, Orochimaru suddenly let out a creepy laugh, and then said, "Since old friends are here, come out." Rustling as Orochimaru finished speaking, a sound like insects crawling came. No, not like, there really were a bunch of insects crawling. Then, in the darkness, in the corner of the tent, a group of insects smaller than sesame seeds crawled out. Then, these insects gathered together, accompanied by a wave of chakra, and turned into a figure wearing a black cloak. Orochimaru looked at the other person, his mouth curled up a little, and he called out his name directly, "Ryoma, That's right, the person who came was none other than Danzo's right-hand man, Aburame Ryoma, and the bug just now was not an ordinary bug, but a parasitic bug from the Aburame clan. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Aburame Ryoma slightly raised his head, revealing his face under the cloak, rigid and serious. Aburame Ryoma had no intention of greeting and reminiscing with Orochimaru, his old partner, and directly said, "Orochimaru, the situation on the Iwagakure front has stabilized. When will you carry out Danzo's order?" A strange color flashed in Orochimaru's eyes. More than 2 months ago, Danzo secretly sent him an order, asking him to transfer 2 Uchiha clan brats to the dangerous mist-hidden castle battlefield. However, the situation on the Iwagakure front was unstable at the time, and these 2 people showed good combat power and played a pivotal role in their respective defense lines. Therefore, for the sake of the overall situation, Orochimaru refused. Danzo seemed to have understood the situation at the front and did not urge him. This delay lasted for nearly 3 months. Originally, Orochimaru almost forgot about these 2 people. Unexpectedly, Danzo mentioned them again today. This made Orochimaru curious about the 2 people. What was the situation that made Danzo target them so much? However, Orochimaru had not been killed instantly by Uchiha Itachi, and he was not so obsessed with the Sharingan. So, he was just a little curious. He was not willing to fall out with Danzo for this. So, he thought about it and said, "I will arrange for them to go to the Iwagakure battlefield as soon as possible." As for what happens next, before Orochimaru finished speaking, Aburame Ryoma interrupted coldly, "You don't need to worry about what happens next. Hey, this is the best." Orochimaru licked his lips and said with a smile. The matter was done. Aburame Ryoma no longer stayed, and his figure turned into a group of parasites again and disappeared into the tent. Watching the other person's back as he left, Orochimaru sat for a while before getting up and leaving the tent and returning to the headquarters. He did not go to the office, but went straight to the archive room. The Chunin in charge of the guard saw Orochimaru coming and hurriedly greeted him. Orochimaru responded lightly and walked into the archive room. Soon, the mission files about Qingming and Uchiha Shisu were placed on the table. Orochimaru carefully read through the files, and a strange color flashed in his eyes from time to time. After a while, he put down the last file. It clearly recorded that Qingming fought against many enemies in the Otani village base, wiped out the Iwagakure Junin, and finally saved the base. Instant body Shisu. Ghost sword Qingming. Orochimaru murmured these 2 names. After a long time, he laughed again and whispered to himself, "Danzo, I wonder if you can subdue these 2 geniuses." Faintly, there was a hint of excitement in his tone. Chapter 272 Return. Qingming naturally didn't know about the secret contacts between Aburame Ryoma and Orochimaru. At this time, he was on his way back. Although the base camp asked him to return as soon as possible, Qingming was still not in a hurry. He walked and stopped along the way, and took a certain amount of time to practice every day. So, it was not until the afternoon of the 3rd day that he returned to the base camp. After several months, Qingming returned to this familiar place again, and he couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Thinking back to the beginning, when he had just graduated and came to the battlefield of the Rain Country, he performed some logistical patrol tasks here. Unknowingly, more than a year has passed, and his strength has improved a lot, while the teachers and classmates who accompanied him have long been buried on the battlefield. Qingming sighed lightly, and no longer stayed, and immediately walked deeper into the base camp. Along the way, he met several waves of patrol teams, verified his identity several times, passed through several lines of defense, and finally arrived at the central base camp. After arriving at the mission center and completing the registration, the other party did not immediately assign him a task, but gave him 3 days of vacation. During these 3 days, as long as he does not leave the base camp area, he can move around freely. After leaving the mission center, Qingming looked back at the sign and muttered, 3 days of vacation. Why does it feel like the last meal of the year? Shaking his head, Qingming stopped thinking about it. Since the other party gave him 3 days off, he would use it first, and as for what would happen later, we'll talk about it later. Of course, these 3 days cannot be wasted, and cultivation must continue. However, before cultivation, there is one more thing to do. Squeak. Qingming drew out the dagger from his waist. He took a look at this ordinary weapon, then put it back into his waist, and then walked straight to the Uchiha clan's base camp. It has been almost 2 months, and there is still no news about the support he applied for from the clan. Now that he has returned to the base camp, he will go and see what is going on. Soon, he found the person in charge of the Uchiha clan on the battlefield here, an elderly elder. It's a bit exaggerated to say that he is old, and the other party is only in his early 50s. However, in the ninja world where the average age is less than 30, 50 years old is considered a long life. In addition, the hidden injuries left by fighting on the battlefield in his early years made him look older than his actual age, so it was nothing to say that he was old. Seeing Qingming coming over, the Uchiha elder smiled and said, "Hey, it's Qingming, you're back." Hearing this, Qingming's eyes fixed and asked, "Elder, did you know I was coming back?" Hearing this, the Uchiha elder chuckled a few times. Then, he said meaningfully, "Qingming boy, don't underestimate the intelligence capabilities of the clan. We also have people in the mission center. I knew about your transfer order the moment it was issued." Qingming heard this and thought about it. Although the Uchiha clan was secretly excluded and suppressed by the Konoha high-level officials, as one of the Konoha wealthy families, they still had the necessary intelligence and connections. In this case, Qingming's eyes flickered slightly. He did not ask about his request for support in a hurry. Instead, he looked at the other party and asked respectfully, "Then elder, do you know why the headquarters transferred me back this time?" Hearing Qingming's question, the smile on Elder Uchiha's face quickly faded, and then he said, "It seems that you have also noticed it." Elder Uchiha sighed lightly and said, "This time I am afraid that Konoha will suppress us again." Konoha. From the description of these two words, Qingming knew that this elder was probably a member of the radical faction in the Uchiha clan. His words directly separated the Uchiha clan and Konoha, and also implicitly classified him as one of his own factions. Otherwise, he would not use the pronoun we. In an instant, Qingming thought a lot, but did not refute out loud, just quietly waiting for the other party's subsequent words. Judging from the other party's appearance, it seems that he knows something. Sure enough, he continued, "Not only you, but also Shisu." You know Uchiha Shisu, right?" "Yeah," Qingming nodded and said, "We fought each other in the Chunin exam." "Yes, that's him," Elder Uchiha replied, and continued, "Not only you, but Uchiha Shisu is also asked to return to the base camp as soon as possible. According to various intelligence analyses, you are very likely to follow the support troops and rush to the Kirigakure battlefield together this time." Kirigakure battlefield, Qingming showed a hint of doubt. As he said before, the Kirigakure battlefield and the Sand Village battlefield are not very friendly to the ninjas of the Uchiha clan. The former are mostly good at the Kirigakure technique, which is a big restriction for the Uchiha ninjas who rely on the Sharingan to fight. In addition, the Kirigakure battlefield is mainly distributed in the southeastern coastal areas of the Land of Fire, and they often go into the sea during battles. This geographical environment is also a restriction for the Uchiha ninjas, who are generally good at fire escape. With all these factors combined, its danger can be imagined. There is also the Sand Village battlefield. Although it is not as dangerous as the Kirigakure battlefield, the Uchiha ninjas are also uncomfortable there. The puppeteers of the Sand Village are also a kind of restraint for them. It is not only because they do not use their bodies to fight, which limits the performance of the Uchiha ninjas' Sharingan. It is also because puppeteers are generally good at using poison. If they are slightly injured and not treated in time, they may die from the poison. Of course, if you say such a dangerous place, it is not only the Uchiha clan ninjas. Others can go, so can't the Uchiha clan ninjas go? Of course, the Uchiha clan ninjas can go. But the key to the problem is that 80% of the Uchiha clan ninjas were arranged in these two battlefields, and the targeting is too obvious. In this way, it is not difficult to understand why the Uchiha clan rebelled later. With this kind of differential treatment, it would be a ghost if the Uchiha clan had no opinion. Of course, these have nothing to do with Qingming for the time being. He only knows that he will go to the Kirigakure battlefield next. As for fear, there is no such thing. With his current strength, even the dangerous battlefield of Kirigakure is nothing to him. But he was a little unhappy. Because the words of the elder Uchiha in front of him almost proved that someone was indeed plotting against him, and who is this person? Qingming also had the answer in his mind. After all, there are only a few people who can influence Orochimaru's decision. Among them, the old shady Danzo is the most suspicious. Qingming has not forgotten that after the Chunin exam, the other party sent people to kill him on the road. Fuck, should I kill this guy directly? This thought suddenly popped up in Qingming's mind. But in the end he shook his head. It's not that he can't do it, or that he has some concerns, but that Danzo's whereabouts are too secretive. The other party probably did too many bad things and was afraid of being retaliated, so only the root ninja knew his whereabouts. And the root ninja has the tongue trouble root seal on them, which prevents them from saying anything about Danzo whether actively or passively. This makes Qingming unable to obtain information from them. So, for the time being, he can only give up. However, Qingming remembered this account. Whenever he has a chance in the future, he will definitely get rid of the opponent in the first place. As for whether he can beat him, it's a joke. If Danzo had a Sharingan arm later, he might have to work harder. After all, Izanagi and wood release are not easy to deal with. But the current Danzo is not worth mentioning at all. Chapter 273 Gifts and Messages. Seeing Qingming's serious expression, Elder Uchiha thought he was worried about what would happen next. So, he laughed and said, "Don't worry, Qingming boy. When you arrive at a battlefield of Kirigakure, someone from the clan will take care of you." Hearing this, Qingming knew that the other party had misunderstood something, but he did not correct it. Instead, he said, "Thank you for the arrangement, Elder." "Yeah." Elder Uchiha nodded, and then seemed to remember something, and suddenly said, "Wait for me." After saying that, he turned and walked into the inner room, and then quickly returned, but with a book and 2 scrolls in his hands. Seeing these 3 things, Qingming's heart moved slightly. He already had some guesses in his heart, but he still asked in confusion, "Didn't you apply for support from the clan? Here, this is what you want." As he said that, Elder Uchiha handed the 3 things to Qingming. Qingming quickly took them. On the side, Elder Uchiha explained, "The book records the experience of a senior in developing water attribute chakra." Qingming heard it and immediately opened the book and glanced at it. It was indeed similar to the experience of developing wind attribute chakra that he had obtained in the Uchiha library. With this book, he can save a lot of time and energy. However, now is not the time to flip through it. Qingming quickly put it away and then cast his eyes on the 2 scrolls in his hand. Seeing this, Elder Uchiha spoke again. "These 2 scrolls each record a water escape ninjutsu, which should be enough for you to study for a while." Qingming opened the 2 scrolls and saw that one of them recorded the ninjutsu, water escape, water array wall, and the other recorded the ninjutsu, water escape, water dragon bullet. Both are B-level ninjutsu, one for attack and one for defense. It can be seen that the opponent has put in a lot of effort. The only pity is that both water escape, water array wall and water escape, water dragon bullet are just ordinary versions. That is to create a vertical water wall to protect himself, and the water style, water dragon bullet technique with an extra long 44 seals. However, Qingming didn't care too much about it. There was no other reason. With a proficiency panel, he only needed to spend time and energy to raise their levels. At that time, whether it was changing the form of ninjutsu or reducing the number of seals, he could decide according to his own wishes. Therefore, he didn't need to care too much about whether it was an optimized version. However, just as he showed a hint of joy on his face, the Elder Uchiha in front of him told him a bad news. Then he heard him say, "As for the Kusanagi sword you want, the clan has not got it yet. Originally, these things were planned to be given to you together with the Kusanagi sword, but since you are back now, take these away first." Qingming didn't listen to the second half of the other party's words, and he didn't care about the meaning of the explanation. He only noticed that the other party said that he didn't get it, not that he didn't find it. In other words, there's news about the Kusanagi sword in the clan. Qingming's mind moved, and he asked directly. Although he didn't know why Qingming asked this, Elder Uchiha still said truthfully, "Yes, intelligence shows that before the war broke out, the leader of the artisan village accidentally obtained a sword and seemed to be trying to copy it, but unfortunately he never succeeded. So theoretically, the other party has one in his hands now." "Wait, you don't want to do it yourself?" Elder Uchiha was talking when he suddenly saw Qingming's eyes shining and asked hurriedly. Qingming heard it and asked back, "Why? Can't I?" Seeing Qingming talking about snatching so naturally, Elder Uchiha pointed at him and scolded with a smile. You could in fact, he didn't know that Qingming was looking at the person and serving him a dish. If it was someone else, Qingming would not show it so obviously. But the Elder Uchiha opposite was obviously a radical. And all radicals, to put it in a good way, do things in an unconventional way, and to put it in a bad way, that is, they don't follow the rules. What's more, this is still an extraordinary world. In this world where great power belongs to oneself, strength can often determine many things. Once those small ninja villages have something good, aren't they taken away by the 5 major ninja villages? Therefore, the idea he expressed was nothing. In fact, because of his idea, the radical elder in front of him might even look at him more favorably. However, to his surprise, Elder Uchiha in front of him directly denied his idea and said bluntly, "No." Why? Qingming didn't hold back and asked directly. Hearing this, Elder Uchiha shook his head and said, "You can't find him." "What do you mean?" Qingming asked again. "It means literally," Elder Uchiha replied. "Since the outbreak of the war, the Artisan Ninja Village has been disbanded, and all the ninjas in the Artisan Ninja Village have hidden." Qingming was confused when he first heard the news. Seeing this, Elder Uchiha continued, "You should know that the Artisan Ninja Village is very good at making ninja tools, right?" "Yes," Qingming nodded. "Then do you know that in peacetime, more than 70% of the ninja tools of the 5 major ninja villages are supplied by them?" Elder Uchiha asked again. Qingming shook his head. He really didn't know this. In his previous life, he only mentioned the small ninja villages in passing. Who knew that the Artisan Ninja Village had such a great influence? However, at this point, he could guess why the Artisan Ninja Village was disbanded. As a supplier of arms, their strength was too weak to protect such a huge profit. They couldn't even keep themselves out of trouble. It would be fine in peacetime, and they would make a little money if they were allowed to. But in wartime, it was not a question of whether they could make money or not, but their existence had already affected the balance of the war to some extent. With such a strong ability to manufacture ninja tools, if the Artisan Ninja Village completely turned to a certain village and made ninja tools for it with all its strength, then the advantage of the ninja tools of this village would be extremely huge. No one wanted to see this situation. And if they fought for it themselves, they would become the target of public criticism. Therefore, in order to ensure that other villages would not receive assistance from the Artisan Ninja Village, the best way was to wipe them out. Only in this way can the relative balance of the war be guaranteed. Obviously, the leader of the Takumi village realized this and sensed the hidden crisis. Therefore, the Takumi village was disbanded early. And everyone was divided into small groups and scattered throughout the ninja world. The Takumi village can supply more than 70% of the ninja tools to the 5 major ninja villages in peacetime, because they work together and divide the work. Now that everyone is scattered, it is naturally impossible to do this. In this way, even the 5 major ninja villages will not spend a lot of effort to find and deal with them. In this way, when the war is over, they will gather again and re-establish the Takumi village. This is the way of survival of the Takumi village. Through his own thinking and the narration of Elder Uchiha, Qingming understood the reason for the dissolution of the Takumi village, and also understood why the other party denied his idea. In this case, it would be a miracle for him to find the leader of the Takumi village. Chapter 274 Success. After finally getting the news, the clues were suddenly cut off, which made Qingming feel a little uncomfortable. Just when he was secretly sad, he suddenly saw Elder Uchiha in front of him with a calm look, as if he had a plan in mind and was very confident. Suddenly, he remembered that the other party had a qualifier before not yet obtained, that is, temporarily. In other words, the other party may have the news of the leader of the Takumi village. However, looking at the other party's appearance, he might have to make some promises. With this thought, Qingming pondered for a while, and then said directly, "I wonder if the elder needs me to do anything." Hearing this, Elder Uchiha looked Qingming up and down, and said with satisfaction, "The boy is teachable." After speaking, he laughed heartily. After laughing, he said, "In fact, not long ago, the cat lady sent a message that the ninja cats of their clan found a person who was suspected to be the leader of the Takumi village, but this news has not been confirmed yet." Cat Lady Qingming's mind quickly flashed with relevant information. Granny Cat is an honest black market merchant who lives with a group of ninja cats and runs a ninja tool shop. She has been on good terms with the Uchiha clan for generations. She is not only the intelligence source of the Uchiha clan, but also their exclusive weapon supplier. The intelligence was sent by her, so it shouldn't be wrong, Qingming thought to himself, and then asked, "Where's the target?" "The country of craftsmen," Elder Uchiha replied. "What?" Qingming was shocked and said, "He actually dares to stay in the country of craftsmen." "Dare?" Elder Uchiha looked at Qingming in surprise and asked, "Why not?" Hearing this, Qingming was stunned at first, and then reacted. What the 5 major ninja villages are afraid of is that the entire craftsman village will fall to other villages, not that he is just the leader of the craftsman village. As long as the other party does not do something that is easy to cause misunderstandings, such as summoning the ninjas of the craftsman village, even if the spies of the 5 major ninja villages find him, they will probably not do anything. After all, after the war, they still need the craftsman village to serve them, so it is naturally not good to do too much now. In this case, it is normal for the other party to continue to stay in the land of craftsmen. Maybe the other party is staying here on purpose, and showing up from time to time, so that the 5 major ninja villages can be assured. After thinking this through, Qingming said to Elder Uchiha, "Elder, please send me a message immediately after confirming the other party's whereabouts. You want to do it yourself." Hearing this, Elder Uchiha frowned slightly, but thinking of Qingming's past achievements, he finally nodded and replied, "Okay. I will let someone notify you when the time comes." After that, the two chatted for a while, and Qingming said goodbye and left. And until the end, Elder Uchiha did not ask him to do anything. Qingming had expected this. What the other party wanted was actually an attitude, not that he had to do anything. At least, not now. It was for this reason that Qingming asked the other party what he wanted him to do cleanly and neatly, otherwise he really thought that he would be willing to obey the other party's orders for a mere Kusanagi sword. Everything was just acting. To him, the radicals and conservatives in the Uchiha clan were just familiar strangers. If he wanted, he could do anything, even overthrow Konoha's rule for them, but if he didn't want to, no one could coerce or bribe him. With a Mangekyo Sharingan and his rapidly growing strength, he had the confidence. The sun sets and rises. In a blink of an eye, time came to the next day. In the morning, Qingming came to the familiar training ground on the northwest side of the base camp. He didn't split a shadow clone for a long time, but prepared to practice ninjutsu himself, water style, water array wall. After an afternoon and evening of research, he had some experience in how to develop water attribute chakra. Next, as long as he successfully performed water style, water array wall, he would be almost at the entrance. Compared with the wind style, great breakthrough that he practiced to develop wind attribute chakra, the difficulty of water style, water array wall is undoubtedly higher. But Qingming has confidence. If nothing else, just in terms of chakra control, he is not at the same level now as he was back then, not to mention that he also has the eye technique of human control. The different attributes of chakra are, after all, just a display of different properties of chakra. According to the fact that every Jonin can develop a second or even a third attribute, in theory, everyone should have all the attributes. However, the later it is, the more difficult it is to develop. But this problem does not exist here with Qingming. Since chakra already has this nature, Qingming can completely use human control to guide it, and with enough theoretical knowledge, it should be easy to complete. Thinking of it, Qingming opened the Sharingan and scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there was no one else, he thought about it and the 3 Magatama Sharingan instantly turned into a kaleidoscope. A slight tingling sensation came, and a stream of blood flowed from his right eye. The power of human control was added to his body. Qingming recalled the various experiences in the book about developing water attribute chakra, combined with the corresponding theoretical knowledge, and silently used the power of human control to guide the changes in the chakra in his body. After a moment, he raised his hands and began to form seals in a methodical manner. Yin czc yin. Bang! A cloud of chakra smoke exploded. A water wall suddenly emerged from the ground and stood about 1 meter in front of Qingming. However, it only lasted for less than half a second before the water wall suddenly collapsed and turned into a pool of water, gathering at Qingming's feet. The kaleidoscope closed, Qingming wiped the blood off his face, and a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. His guess was indeed correct. With the help of the power of human defense and sufficient theoretical knowledge, he easily developed the water attribute of chakra. Moreover, with the help of human defense to improve the control of the body, he successfully performed a B-level ninjutsu, water style, water array wall. Although the water wall collapsed soon, it was a breakthrough from 0 to 1. Qingming opened the panel and took a look. Without any surprise, there was an extra skill on his panel, water style, water array wall, LV0, 1/100. Next, as long as he continues to work hard, he will soon be able to improve the level of this technique. As his proficiency in water style, water array wall increases, his understanding and mastery of the changes in the form and nature of water attribute chakra will gradually deepen. By then, he will not have to worry about the sudden collapse of the water wall. In addition, He can also try to get started with water style, water dragon bullets technique. However, Qingming does not plan to use human defense to speed up this time. Anyway, he has successfully developed water attribute chakra. As long as he persists in practicing dozens of times, he can always complete the breakthrough from 0 to 1. By then, the hard work will be over. Chapter 275 Redistribution. Having made a decision, Qingming naturally stopped wasting time. He raised his hands, formed the character seal, and instantly performed the shadow clone technique. Bang bang bang, accompanied by a burst of chakra smoke, 5 figures appeared in front of him. Qingming looked at 2 of them and told them to practice wind style, wind blade and Rasengan. Although he now has wind style, Rasengan, he still cannot give up the basic Rasengan. In addition, the level of his wind style, Rasengan, is still too low, and the completion is insufficient, making it difficult to play a role in actual combat. Therefore, as the only 2 means of strong attack, wind style, wind blade cannot be given up. In fact, as long as his wind style, Rasengan completion does not reach 100% in a day and has the ability to attack out of body, then wind style, wind blade cannot be relaxed. As for wind style, Rasengan, after the level of wind style, wind blade has been raised and it can attack remotely. Should he continue to work on wind style, wind blade? Qingming estimated that by then, his wind style, wind blade should have been perfected long ago, and he wouldn't have to think about this issue at all. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Qingming sent the 2 shadow clones away, then looked at the third person. Without Qingming's instructions, the shadow clone took the initiative to speak. Then I should practice wind style, Rasengan, right? Yes, Qingming nodded. Okay, the shadow clone shrugged and walked aside. There is no doubt that practicing wind style, Rasengan, is undoubtedly the most labor-intensive, but as a part of Qingming, he has no complaints. As for the remaining 2, they were prepared by Qingming for practicing water style, water array wall and water style, water dragon bullets technique. The former has already completed the breakthrough from 0 to 1, and the next step is to continue to accumulate experience and then transform it into panel proficiency through his hands regularly. As for the latter, the other party needs to explore it on his own. Qingming's requirements for him are not high, and he only needs to succeed once before noon. After arranging the training tasks for the 5 shadow clones, he also found a place and began to practice the palm immortal technique to strengthen his body. However, after reducing the frequency of using human control in this process, his training efficiency inevitably decreased a lot. Even though more than 20 days have passed, his body still has no signs of transformation. Qingming felt it carefully and estimated that it would take at least half a month for his body to reach the critical point of transformation. A total of more than a month. To be honest, this speed is not slow. After all, it took a month to improve the physique from 13 points to 14 points. Now it is impossible to improve from 15 points to 16 points in less time. If he hadn't occasionally used human control to guide it, it would probably not be so fast. Concentrating his mind, Qingming stopped thinking and began to concentrate on practicing. In a flash, several hours passed. It was close to noon. After the body collapsed 3 times, the shadow clone responsible for practicing water style, water dragon bullet technique finally succeeded. Qingming opened his eyes and looked at the shadow clone not far away, and saw a water dragon slowly condensing in front of it. Although the water dragon only lasted less than half a second before turning into a splash of water, Qingming still nodded with satisfaction. Because, this can be considered a success. The level 0 stage is originally the process of getting started, and it is normal to be unstable. As long as you complete the breakthrough from 0 to 1, it will be fine. Taking advantage of the fact that the shadow clone is now the most profound, Qingming directly lifted the shadow clone technique and turned the opponent's practice experience into his own resources. After closing his eyes and comprehending for a moment, Qingming suddenly opened his eyes. Then, his hands were like a butterfly flying through flowers, quickly forming seals, and finally successfully replicated and performed the water style, water dragon bullets technique. However, it also collapsed before it lasted for a second. But it doesn't matter, because he has completed the breakthrough from 0 to 1, and all he has to do next is to work hard. However, Qingming shook his wrist. These extra long 44 seals still made him a little difficult to hold. Just now, he spent 7 or 8 seconds to complete the seal. If it was put into actual combat, it would probably be enough for the enemy to kill him several times. However, this was due to the inherent deficiency of this technique. Even Kakashi and Zabuza took 4 seconds to successfully perform this technique. Although this speed was nearly twice as fast as his, it was not very practical. 4 seconds was enough for him to complete the counterattack. Only by simplifying this technique into 2 or 3 skills like Tabirama Senju, and achieving a certain sense of instant, can it be considered to have real practical significance. Otherwise, you must find the opportunity to perform the technique. And this kind of ninjutsu that needs to be performed when the opportunity arises is not up to standard in Qingming's view. Maybe his vision is too high, but it is undeniable that the ninjutsu that he has perfected can indeed achieve an effect similar to instant. It is precisely because of this that Qingming's standard for can be used in actual combat is a bit high. Fortunately, the water-style, water dragon bullet technique can be continuously optimized and improved in subsequent upgrades, otherwise he might have abandoned it. Now, let's just work on it. However, now that all the ninjutsu that were planned to be learned have been learned, it's time to redistribute the chakra. Panel. With a thought, Qingming opened the proficiency panel. The next moment, a light blue light screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 12 years old. Constitution, 15 spirit, 19 chakra, 45,500, 5,496,457,780, bloodline, Sharingan, main Gekyo, 2,177, 50,000, 2,689/50000, skills, chakra refining technique, LV5, 939/5000, LV5, 1027, 5000, wind style, wind blade, LV6, 1/10000, LV6, 765/10000, wind style, Sharingan, LV1, 35 out of 200, water style, water array wall, LV1, 84 out of 100, water style, water dragon bullet technique, LV0, 1/100, shadow clone technique, LV4, 1/2000, LV4, 165/2000, chakra absorption technique, LV5, 3550/5000, Rasengan, LV6, 120/10000, LV6, 902/10000, palm immortal technique, LV7, 16610/20000, LV7, 18050/20000, chakra scalpel, LV5, 1200/5000, heart reflection technique, LV7, 11414/20000, LV7, 12950/20000, sword technique, LV6, 9050/10000, LV6, 9410/10000, phantom sword technique, LV4, 350/2000, LV4, 701/2000, instant sword technique, LV1, 162 out of 200, chakra control, LV5, 2050, 5000, LV5, 2160, 5000, perfect skills. Looking at the 3 new skills on the panel, Qingming thought for a moment and decided to keep the 10,000 chakras invested in wind style, Sharingan unchanged. As for water style, water array wall and water style, water dragon bullet technique, Qingming decided to extract 3,000 chakras from wind style, wind blade and Rasengan respectively and distribute them equally. In this way, there will be 10,000 chakras left for practicing wind style, wind blade and Rasengan. Correspondingly, water style, water array wall and water style, water dragon bullet technique will receive a total of 6,000 chakras. In this way, these 2 skills can gain 35 proficiency points each day. Although the improvement is relatively small, Qingming will invest the extra chakra he gets after arriving at the hidden mist battlefield. Therefore, the small improvement is only temporary. In addition, with the 2 diversions, the proficiency points that is wind style, wind blade and Rasengan can obtain every day have also dropped from the previous 220 points to about 110 points now. There is also wind style, Shuriken. Because each practice consumes a lot of energy, even if you can get 10,000 chakra points every day, the proficiency points you get are only about 60 points. As for the remaining palm immortal technique and reflection heart technique, Qingming does not intend to move, and still invests 36,000 and 30,000 chakra points every day. In this way, they can gain 240 and 192 proficiency points respectively. So far, the 100,020 chakra points that he can restore every day have been distributed. If there are no major problems in the future, this method will be used for distribution. After completing the distribution of chakra, Qingming felt that his thoughts were much clearer, and then he stopped wasting time and started practicing again. I have something to do today, so the update is late, so I will update twice. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.